reaching out for some help. Anybody have any suggestions of what to do about organized crime? Being a victim of historical levels of crimes in the United States? Also, being a veteran and fallen victim to the extremes of corruption of the Veterans Administration, the Department of Finance and Accounting Services, DOD, and all that. So, all that stuff about honor and loyalty and stuff they talk about, yeah, how much of that going on? Very much in need of some help. Things are very serious. Don't really know what to do because every time I try to step out for help, you get it's a vast deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy against rights. You can't as much as report a crime in this nation. People can steal jet airplanes and they think it's all okay. It's really gotten out of hand. If anybody knows anybody that could help, I sure would appreciate it. Kind of sort of stranded alongside the road with absolutely nothing. I have no food left, no money because of all the people robbing me. And, it's very serious. I'm not sure where all the compassionate people are in the United States of America. Seems like this isn't a country anymore. Democracy has failed. Organized crime has taken over. Domestic terrorism. All some pretty big stuff, I had people in my own country take part in theft of Department of Defense contracts, literally billion-dollar business. It's been a very big situation. Major situation. I don't really know what to do. So if anybody knows anybody like within the Department of Contract Audit Agency, or if anybody knows anybody that isn't corrupt in a law enforcement position that would actually take a report on stolen identity, that would be really great. Supposed to be retired and I can't because of all the crimes going on. So I have been left stranded and alongside the road trying to stay alive in the front seat of a vehicle, which hasn't been a very good situation. All some pretty big stuff. But anyways, yeah, very much in need of some help. Community resources, that's not been very helpful. I was able to achieve some food. They helped me with a little bit of fuel, and I was able to get some clothes from a shelter. But I'm absolutely down to nothing. And it's pretty sad, seeing as how I put millions and millions back into economic development and helped numerous amounts of people all over the United States. And, I do have ownership in literally $1 trillion business. All that stuff they talk about, who did what. I have ownership in Apple, Microsoft, modern technology, the whole nine. And you can't seem to get any help from anybody in the United States. When you go to a law enforcement agency, try to report, major crimes going on, they don't want to help. And they haven't helped. Matter of fact, they've done nothing. And writing letters to the government, got nowhere there either. And, I'm like everybody else. I worked for my life. I earned it. I've been a good man. I've been through an absolute nightmare by the vast amounts of people taking part in organized crime, stealing all of my documents. When all this started out, they held me at gunpoint and they actually robbed aspects of projects I was working on for space engineering and aeronautics and other things. So that was kind of a big issue. And then they stole all of my rightful true credentials. That was a big issue. And then went through a massive set of legal abuses and everything else by the extremities of corruption. People in my own family stealing from me. Um, so pretty much for the last 3 years, I've been living in a vehicle trying to piece my life back together. Went all the way to Washington, D.C., and those folks, they just totally ignored me and betrayed me. They stole all of my health care, um, stealing all of my property, they stole my stocks, shares, holdings, royalties, revenues, the whole nine. It's pretty sad. I worked with the United Nations to form the World Trade Organization in 1995. And it's all been some very serious issues going on. I don't know if you all can hear me or not. Um, but anyways, yeah, it's all been some very serious issues. Well, I had all of mine set up. I trusted people with my documents, and they're withholding all of my documents, stealing them. The SEC has been very corrupt. And under Freedom of Information Act, the last time I went through this, they have refused to release documents or enforce. And I've had a lot of trouble with hackers and trying to get communications to anybody to help enforce anything. Um, yeah, it does take 3 years to get my life back together. It takes longer than that. I've been being attacked for about 9.5 years. I used to work Department of Defense contracts, space engineering and aeronautics. Also had military pilot license and civilian. So when you've been a targeted individual, yeah, it takes a while to get your life back together. And anybody that hasn't walked in my shoes, don't be so sure to pretend you know what you're talking about. Because I've been at the upper levels of government, been on international security councils, all kinds of stuff like that with the United Nations. In fact, I have done a lot of foreign trade policies from the NAFTA, the World Trade Organization, United States, Canadian, Mexico agreements, all that kind of stuff. So I've got some history, written a lot of the laws, rules, regulations, worked a lot in government. All the way back for many years and worked in genetics and GMO food crops and things like that, ethanol fuel blends. Going all the way back to the days when Apple was failing. I bought Apple out and had controlling stock options in Apple and worked many, many years, worked almost 18 years on developing the schematics of Apple iPhone and Apple iPads, iPods, all that kind of stuff. Sure did. I used to be really good in, technologies and stuff like that. Matter of fact, I took my money out of Microsoft and all of my other contracts and things like that and actually bought Apple out. So that's all part of my life. And, I've known rich, famous people, celebrities, Hollywood, famous musicians, all that kind of stuff too. Used to actually have ownership in Marvel Studios to, help do like Lord of the Rings, a lot of movies and stuff like that. Had ownership in some stuff. They also took to stealing from me. And, I don't really have much of a life anymore. Right now, I'm sitting here. I don't have any food left. They finished hacking my last debit card, which I had was connected to a Cash App. They hacked it and stole it, so now I don't even have that. Yeah, I'm still in the woods. And I'm not telling tall tales, I'm telling fact and truth. And when I lost my life and started getting attacked, I was working 13 major Department of Defense contracts, uh, which about 6 of those I have ownership in, and design and engineering and things like that. And I finished up my career. I was working on aspects of cures for cancer, the Right to Try Act, finishing up a children's hospital in the state of Texas, and then also working other aspects of IT design of the e-benefits website for the Veterans Administration, working ROTC and some other things like that. And I really had a lot of things going on. And, trying to honor my country, trying to be a good man, and, doing the best I knew how to do. But, I mean, here's this thing, people, I'm one man. I was very wealthy, and, I honored my country. I laid my life aside to work in National Oceanic Center. I helped try to do the best I could for FEMA. I helped to, work a lot of these natural disasters and things like that. Poured a lot of charity in my lifetime, poured billions back into charity. And, I was supposed to be retired, and anyway, I wake up one day and they take two massive cyber crimes and started attacking me. They stole my ID me, they stole my LifeLock. They stole all of my .mils, my .govs, all of my veterans stuff. And the attacks continued, and I had my stock share portfolio over on different things, and they did cyber crimes, attacked there. I had backups on USB flash drives, digital copies of SIM cards and flash drives, SD cards and everything else. They stole all that, and it's really been pretty serious. So, like having ownership in DirecTV and AT&T, did all that kind of stuff too. And actually, I went to congressional hearings on that. They tried to get me on an antitrust policy one time because they said I was monopolizing on business. I used to have that much business, But my main goal wasn't always having that much business. It was just, that's the way it turned out, I mean, I used to have a brilliant career, and my number one goal was to try to help people all across the United States and all the way across the world. I see a lot of these comments on there about people talking about lies and everything else. Well, I mean, the FBI has a semi-truckload of documents, and I've been through all this with military and government. I've been to the United Nations Civil Rights Division before on it, and the Security Council. So it's all been quite extensive. But right now, it's just a very serious life-threatening situation. And, I earned my career. I've been good to people. I've tried to reach out for help. I don't really know what to do. I do suffer from PTSD really bad, and most of that is occupational. It kind of takes a toll after you've been to all these natural disasters, and you've seen a lot of dead bodies and a lot of death and destruction, a lot of pain and sorrow of not only your own but other people. And it takes a big toll on you. It takes a very big toll on you, and it really hurts. So, I mean, here's the thing. They talk about all this stuff with people like Jeffrey Epstein and stuff like that. Yeah, that man stole around $80 million from me. That's true. There's a lot of people in very rich, wealthy positions that are stealing from me. I got a bank that's sitting down here probably 15 miles from me that's stealing money from me, is stealing an account. Another 150 miles south of me, another bank stealing from me. While I was active duty, they stole all of my coastline property, which I owned. And then I went back to courts and found out they had run cases through courts and frauded me out of things. So it's been pretty serious. Yep, I sure did perform some LASIK on my grandmother. It wasn't actually LASIK, it was corneal transplants at the time. And yes, I did help to develop LASIK. And yes, I am a co-founder of Amazon the same year that I was working with the United Nations on the World Trade Organization and a whole lot of other things. So yes, it is true. And one of my last Amazon projects was in St. Louis, Missouri, and up in the state of Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis. Matter of fact, when I owned controlling stock options in Jeep, was up there and stopped by the Samsung facility because I do have some affiliation with Samsung and partial contracts with like the Gear 360 and other things. And they ended up stopping up there and ended up getting held at gunpoint and robbed. Same thing happened to me, just as an example. I used to work with a company called Textron, and
I was leaving Textron off of an aeronautical contract and headed to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. I was in a very expensive sports car. I stopped by Fort Jackson in South Carolina, was on my way to the Pentagon, stopped in, it was Charlotte, North Carolina, at a place called Arrowwood Lane, and was going to get a service job done on this vehicle. So I pull in the warehouse, and next thing you know, they jump out, and an entire group of people hold me at gunpoint. They loaded my vehicle up in the back of a semi-truck at the loading dock, stole my briefcase from me, all of my documents, all of my credit cards, all of my IDs, stole aspects of very important documents. It was all reported, and nobody ever did anything about that. And some of the vehicles I had stolen was actually registered with federal programs such as the Anti-Theft Vehicle Protection Program, so they know what I'm talking about. Noah Scott, who was at Amazon early, no. Part of my career, I stepped away in part of my career in as a military and in honor of my nation. And while I was active, I mean, people just took to wiping out my entire life. So it turned to being a very serious situation. And, that's guys like Bill Gates and Melinda. I am a board member of the Gates Foundation. And my last project was, I took a multi-million dollars out. I donated some state and federal lands. Did a lot of stuff buying small businesses, just giving to people and helping do a lot of great and amazing things. And I ended up stopping at a place along the interstate on I-44 highway in the middle of Missouri. And there was two chicks, stole my briefcase, all of my documents, the remainder of the money, and a white Camaro, and drove away with it. Never have had any resolve or resolution to the situation. Actually, I am a board member, and I personally did the business deal in the middle of a city called Rolla, Missouri at the time. So, yeah, I am the real deal, and, I've got history that goes all the way back to NASA. And you want to know why the No Fear Act exists? Because at the time, I was working some of my DoD contracts and space engineering and aeronautics and private companies, and also affiliation with NASA. And at the time, they started stealing from me and doing the same thing they are now, the vast criminal organization of people in the United States. And so I stepped out, and drafted the No Fear Act and all kinds of things like that. But, it's been pretty serious things going on. And, I used to fly and design and all kinds of things like that. I had a brilliant career, and I worked for it, everything, in my entire life. So, I stepped out at one point in time, part of my career. I used to work on helping to recover missing children. I helped to expand the Amber Alert expansions. And, I helped pioneer our entire national 911 emergency response address systems and things like that, putting satellites in the sky and design. Helped do all that kind of stuff, and worked on a lot of technology. And nope, I have Santa Clara, never been to Santa Clara, not that I know of. But anyway, it's pretty bad because when people control the information of technology, and it's a very serious issue. So when they control the entire technology information, it becomes very dangerous because these people, like with Google, Bing, Yahoo, and all that, when they control the mass media, that's a problem because they can put out anything they want. And it's basically the basics of psychological warfare. And if you know anything about controlled response in, psychology is a basis of Mendel, or no, that was people ants. That was my genetics. But it was Pavlov and the study of dogs and ringing a bell. And most people are just like that with Pavlov and ringing a bell. It's called trained response. And with trained response, I know all about that because I used to help train drug dogs and bomb squad dogs and all kinds of stuff like that. And canines and, help do all that kind of stuff. And, go all the way back to one of the first solar vehicles. Helped develop the first solar energy and the first solar glider, and did that out of the state of Missouri. And, I used to build robotics, early robotics, going all the way back to 1992, and have even built aspects of robotics bomb squad equipment, all kinds of cool stuff. But long story short, I am stranded in Tuscaloosa, outside of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It's a pretty serious situation because, Tuscaloosa in 2011, just like Joplin, Missouri in 2011, and other world events. I came into this town just like all the other tornado and disaster reliefs. I've stacked my share of sandbags on levees and all kinds of stuff. Yep, I may have said that 2 weeks ago, and I'll still maintain my story. Because this is the only life that I have. You know why? Because American people are horrible. And my country has turned to organized crime and domestic terrorism in violations of H.R. Bill 350. And a whole list of other crimes such as Title 18 U.S.C. 241, conspiracy against rights, Title 18 U.S.C. 242, violation of rights under color of law. And right now, which is a lot of this is a standing Title 18 U.S.C. 225 under a RICO ongoing criminal enterprise of organized crime. And it definitely meets the criteria. And, I've been through all this with the SEC, the FBI, Congress, the Senate, military justice, the Supreme Court, and the whole 9 yards. Been there, done all that, and including the United Nations Civil Rights Division. So, WD-40, yeah, I've worked on other formulas of WD-40, and sure have. Yeah, I've got all kinds of stuff out there, modern tech and inventions and all kinds of things, Supposed to be drawing royalties and revenues. I even had patented trademark logos. One of my cousins, I trusted her with some of my business while I went active, and they ended up stealing a multi-million-dollar trademark logo and graphic art design company from me, and I was supposed to be drawing revenues on. I put in all the work on all of it. Did I invent the Tesla electric car? No, I didn't invent the Tesla electric car, but I did do some of the first electric vehicles and the technologies and built some of the first prototypes. And that goes all the way back to like the Chevy Volt. And yes, I did make multi-millions of dollars of investments into Tesla and SpaceX back when Elon was just a geek. Nobody liked him. And I stood up for Elon and tried to help him out. And on initial investments, went in with multi-millions of dollars of my own money, and do have technically co-ownership in that company. I'm old enough, that's for sure. Too old, and I've lost a big portion of my life being a victim to organized crime. And all because I honored my country. And yes, I did in the past. I have been to Washington, D.C. I've run aspects of Secret Service detail and everything else as a federal agent. And did my job above and beyond for my country. So I've been a good man, and I protected some of the best people out there, protected their children. I was very well respected. In fact, that in the past, they asked me to try out for some Supreme Court stuff, so I did. So I went in and gave financial disclosure statements. I had to do polygraph tests, the whole 9 yards, and it was a very stringent, strict procedure. And now all that information's, I can't even get my hands on it. And that had all of my other linked evidence and all kinds of stuff. So it's all been some pretty serious stuff, I mean, I've got ownership in foreign domestic oil companies, biofuel companies, the whole 9 yards, natural resource companies. Yep, have ownership in all that also. And, I used to do a lot of stuff with Superfund cleanup sites. And, I wanted to contribute back doing good things for my country and people, number one. And we had a lot of these major companies and corporations out there that were taking, y'all don't really understand what you're up against with Big Pharma and our FDA regulations. We got stuff that are still out there that are poisoning our people, that some other countries now are waking up to some of this and saying, hey, this is some really bad stuff going on. So we got a lot of people and a lot of cancers that are linked back to some of this kind of stuff. And yes, I have worked cures for cancer. Matter of fact, cesium radiation seeds were my invention. I did so out of St. Louis with St. Jude's and some other hospitals, put together my own team, and had a company called JCI, which was helping me to sponsor some of the research and development on this. And at the time, I was working Weldon Springs nuclear containment radiation places. I had patents on nuclear containment waste units made out of lead, which I do have ownership in lead recycling companies. And I had also worked at a place in the middle of Missouri called Times Beach, and the remediation of it to, it was poison. People just picked up and walked out because the whole town was contaminated. I worked many years on that off and on to rebuild it back into a national wildlife habitat, whole 9 yards, which is all safe now. I worked on building dams, hydroelectric dams, newer technologies, solar energy to windmills. I even helped Remington keep from going out of business, and did all the contracts for Remington. And that was all a big thing. And matter of fact, when, the big three auto manufacturers of the United States was failing, I worked a lot in engineering and design there also. And part of that was to keep the American economy and thousands, millions of jobs actually going. And, I used to be a member of the UAW, all that kind of stuff too. But long story short, I have had a vast career across everything, including the technologies in your hand, with the cell phone towers to the 5G technologies, going all the way back to radio wave technologies. When I started first getting into radio wave technologies, I used to go up and climb up in firewatch towers. When I was very young, I started my career working with federal agents and stuff like that. I helped pioneer the entire modern USGS mapping systems. The very systems that are in place today, that are in conjunction with Google, the United States Department of Navy, and all that kind of stuff, been there, done that. And so all this kind of stuff that you see out there today, it's all a big part of my life, including artificial intelligence and computer learning systems and stuff like that, going way back, all the way. IBM was the shizzo back then. And I got into certain aspects even with IBM and did all that. I used to know, Michael Dell, all them kind of guys, and, Gateway Computers, did all that. All the way from the I Think computer days, and the first heart transplant. No, I didn't do the first heart transplant, but I have built some artificial heart valves in my lifetime and charitably donated that. And matter of fact, one of the first patients to have that was one of my family members. He was born with his aortic valves crossed backwards and was put on one of the first experimental ECMO machines, which was life support for infants. And so it was all highly experimental at the time. He was basically going to die. And I worked with doctors. I almost had my PhD, yes. And I worked with doctors extensively, and we came up with procedures to put in cadaver valves. Matter of fact, it was a heart valve of a pig. And it ended up crystallizing and had to be replaced. So a young man ended up with a really horrible staph infection in his body. So all this here leads into one thing to the next to the next. Well, at the time I was working two-stroke motorcycle redesigns and two-stroke engine designs, and I got to studying into hearts and, the tricuspid valves of a heart. And it looks basically just like a motorcycle reed. So I messed around with some aluminum cans and other materials and made a artificial heart valve, took to the hospital and presented it to the doctors, and they kind of laughed at me at first, and they said, "You're really serious?" I said, "I'm really serious." And anyway, so they took and reworked the entire heart valve. I went back in a couple weeks, and they presented it to me with paperwork in my hand and wanted to give me millions of dollars for it on a patent on it. And I actually turned them down because I said, I did this for the right purpose, the right reason, and that was to help other people. And if you want to profit from it, take all that money and put back into charity, help other people, do good things. So every time you go to McDonald's and you see the Children's Hospital Miracle Network, all the things about the Ronald McDonald House and all that kind of stuff, I highly, highly, highly suggest be charitable to these organizations. If you have never, ever had the chance to go to any of these establishments and to walk up and down the halls, and yeah, I've laid in the floor with crayons and colored and coloring books with the sick and dying kids and those with diseases and some of them being terminal. And if you don't think that don't break your heart and you don't get PTSD from a little child, that, I mean, that's some pretty serious stuff. So, that led me into other works of nuclear medicine, help cure malaria. Worked on, trying to find cures for Lyme disease. Worked on cures for helping to possible cures for leukemia. And I was working on other cures for cancer. And matter of fact, Donald Trump, him and I worked together on helping to pass the Right to Try Act. I drafted all that because I was still working on other cures for cancer, which was introduction of laparoscopic microwaves to vitamin C saturations and different things like that, which is all the way back into, I was studying genetics, working in aspects of genetics on developing, being able to replicate, new tissue growths going all the way back from many years ago. And I started off, there was a guy, his name was Ron, and he ended up getting in a chemical explosion, burned him all over his body. So I went into time when some of the newer procedures they were just learning all this kind of stuff, and went in and I donated skin grafts in my own body to help skin graft back onto him. Well, I got into studying all this kind of stuff and being able to replicate, new human tissues and the studies of stem cell research and all that kind of stuff. Whatever you want to think. Some of these comments are just absolutely horrible on here. But I can tell you that when all this kind of stuff came out, starting to work on all this stem cell researches and stuff like that, well, I do have World Health Organization, CDC background. I used to work in chemical biological threat response and stuff like that. I had federal contracts on the study of COVID. Worked to also bar off cave systems, subcontracted out, and, the studies of SARS and white nose syndrome and stuff like that also, which there is a link to naturally occurring COVID and things like that. But I still have other theories on that, but I'll keep that to myself. But yeah, well, you can look up anything you want, but that doesn't stop organized crime, does it? And yeah, they did erase me from the internet because I had ownership in Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, helped do all this stuff. And the digital age period helped do all that stuff. So this makes the third time in my life I've been through all this. And let me tell you, when you've had multi-millions to billions and you built trillion-dollar companies, you don't think that these people won't try to erase you and end your life for $1? You got another thing coming. I am also one of the original founders of Bitcoin cryptocurrency. And yes, the federal government does know that. Just like the fact that I did all of the expansion on the entire national 401k program. So people want to pretend like they know you. And, I am who I say I am. Yeah, I am old enough to do what I say I have because I actually lived it. And under the federal guidelines of slander and libel, defamation of character, and also, being a, affiliate of the United Nations and supposed to be under Title 18 USC 1116 as an internationally protected person. I sure did work it. And I've been all over the world in my lifetime. And, it's not my problem that thousands of people all attacked one man. I challenge any of you to be held at gunpoint by entire groups of people, robbed, all the cyber crimes, massive amounts of public corruption, and being a victim over and over and over again. Yep, I used to know all the celebrities and everybody else, worked in all kinds of things in my lifetime. Had a lot of property all over. And one of the things when I started seeing our people dying In all the hurt and pain and suffering, I tried to step up and step out with my own money, my own resources, and the ability to affect positive change through government and other aspects of career. Think I'd rather just go fishing? Matter of fact, in the state of Missouri, I actually helped pioneer the Take a Kid Fishing Day, the hunter safety program. That was mine, going all the way back to 1986. And moving forward into that and developing Hunter Orange and all that, I did all the 8-point restriction rules. I studied blue tongue, chronic wasting disease, invasive, non-invasive species. I helped save all the entire Appalachia range when we were having all the trouble with all the beetles and blue pine disease and all that. Studied all for the timber industry as stump rot and find out why we had biologicals that were killing all of our trees and losing literally billions of dollars all across the United States in timber sales. I did all that kind of stuff too. I've had a vast life in all this. And, the sad thing is that greed, evil, power, and control, it really takes over on people. Takes decades to create. No, it took 40 years of my life to create what I did. Matter of fact, I started my career in toys and video games. What are my thoughts of hunting over bait? Hunting over bait is, it depends on how you want to look at it, on fair chase. Fair chase depends. I mean, my take on that is if it's within legalities of topography. Now, there's some areas, I got into this debate a while back about those that like to run dogs, because I am a sportsman also. So the whole thing is, if depending on topography, yeah, I mean, it gives a slight unfair advantage to some, but minerals, you have mineral licks, but then again, here's the same thing. Farmers can take and dump grain out of what's spilled over out of their, combine machines and stuff like that. And as deer come in to feed off of what has been spilled on the ground, that's totally legal. But crops or what's been left for forage, that's totally legal. So I don't know. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But, it all depends on how people look at it. I have no idea. But anyway, some of those things are what they are. But yep, I do have some ownership in Atari. I started programming those. Some of the first video games I ever programmed with was on Atari. Did Nintendo. And you want to know where facial recognition programs came from? That was me. And I used to work early tech and a lot of technology and lasers and stuff like that. And one of my first was I started getting all this. And matter of fact, I'll take this all the way to Homeland Security, because same technology. Been there, done that also. Matter of fact, helped build Homeland Security. So anyway, the Xbox 360 and the Xbox Kinect, that was all some of my stuff. And the Xbox Kinect is a basis of laser technology, invisible lasers, which goes back to some of my earlier tech and automatic door openers, dusk to dawn lights, different stuff like that. And the advancements in, photosensor technologies, worked on all that, infrared technologies, color, night vision, going all the way back from when I used to study the rods and cones in nocturnal animals' eyes. But I did all that kind of stuff, and I used to have a brilliant bunch of people that used to help me in all these projects. But, it's just like, I can talk about about anything, it's all been a part of my life. Did I start building blocks too? No, but I did work on the first 3D printing systems with the Army National Guard, and I helped to go from the X and Y axis into what some of the new technologies are for current CNC machines. But I did some of all that kind of stuff, and new building materials, worked a lot and all that kind of stuff. I can assure you I'm on the square and level. That's a fact. And, yeah, Kramer needs my help, huh? Now I see who's talking. But anyway, I had Department of Defense contracts and cattle contracts going through numerous states. And when we started doing all the stuff, trying to step out with my stock share portfolios and all building up America again, all the companies and stuff, that was a pretty severe thing. So things like Joplin, Missouri, you want to tell me Joplin, Missouri didn't exist? How about Tom Sauk Reservoir? Go look at Tom Sauk Reservoir. When I cashed a check, I came back off an active military deployment in 2005, and when Tom Sauk Reservoir busted open and it flooded the whole valley, state park washed it away, I took millions of my own dollars and cashed a check from Microsoft out of my own earnings and helped rebuild that. And it was just nonstop, did that. And in 2014-15, about the time I started losing my entire life, I was still finishing up a project on the West Fork River where the mines had collapsed and we lost an entire river underground. I bought $1 million pumps with my own money, sunk them off in the ground to keep the water pumped out, and got with the Army Corps of Engineers, rebuilt an entire riverbed, did all that. So that was one of my last big projects on Army Corps of Engineers. But yeah, stuff like all the arch bridge designs and stuff like that, that's all some of my stuff too. I used to work in a vast amount of engineering. Is who making money off of who? I'm not making money off anybody right now. Why didn't I get the Nobel Peace Prize? I was actually nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize at one point in time many years ago. And it's like right now, I've been robbed so many times. And I stayed busy all of my life. And it's just really been serious. Y'all think it's funny, attempted murder? I've survived that. And people think that your life is funny when you try to save lives and you're trying to make a positive difference in the world. And any sick-minded person that would make a horrible comment about the lives of children being saved and things like that, you're very sick. But it's just like the Amber Alert expansions. Nobody wants to think twice about stuff, and I see some of the comments on here, and if you don't take that seriously, you're part of the problem. Because right now, I used to work all this stuff, from the days of, even Jim Caviezel. I went with Jim Caviezel one time to recover missing children down in South America. And, that led me back into the States. And right now, we still have 97,000 unsolved cases of still missing children in the United States. So that's a pretty big issue right now. 97,000 still missing children. And some of the aspects of the career that I used to work was pretty severe. And I've seen a lot of things, been through a lot of things I wouldn't recommend anybody to ever go through. I've taken my fingers and plugged bullet holes up in people's bodies before, and which led me to helping to develop the foam, expanding foam, and expanding wound packs and all that kind of stuff. Yep. It's just like the current military gear that they have in place today, a lot of your safety gear that they use. I helped do some of that kind of stuff. And it was because I ended up getting a Purple Heart back in the early 90s and went on one of my projects I was working on the first onboard navigation systems for the United States military at the time. It's all declassified information now because it's all pretty commonplace because you have it in your hand every day. Just like when the first prototypes of civilian onboard navigation, I hired out the entire Springfield, Missouri Police Department, signed them all to contract-bound agreements, and I brought in IT department, devs, programmers, developers, and we tore apart entire squad cars to help develop some of the first onboard navigation systems. And then when that was done, we took and marketed that all out to the big three and other auto manufacturers. But it is what it is. It's kind of like Toyota. I worked on some projects with Toyota in the state of Texas with the University of Texas, where we used to take some of the road cones. We made road cone sensors, outfitted all the vehicles with sensors and all that kind of stuff, and worked on some of the very first autopilot driving systems. Did that too. Been there, done that. Still has some pretty wild ideas on a lot of things, but, just to say that I've done my job and I've helped save a lot of lives. I've saved a lot of lives with my own hands. I've saved a lot of people from drowning. And, I've been there through all these horrible disasters, pulling bodies out, the whole 9 yards. It's not cool. And you know what's really bad? I'm supposed to be retired right now and drawing my paychecks, but there's other aspects of my career I can't really talk about. But just to say I did my job, and I'm a very intelligent man. And, been there through a lot of things all over the years. I am who I am, and, I even built veterans memorials in honor of my veterans. My last big veterans memorial, the last 2 veterans memorials, one of them was in Springfield, Missouri. I brought in the deck cranes, financed it, set some of the granite slabs myself. And then one of the others was in Darrow, Indiana, and did all the stuff with all the road pavers, did all that, laid some of the concrete and the masonry work with my own hands. And so it's, it's been so that they don't forget us. I am a veteran, and I laid million, trillion dollar business aside to honor my country, because I thought that was the best way to respect. And yeah, I guess the swimming pool on the Titanic is still full of water. Am I considered a genius? I have no idea. Right now, I'm just considered who I am. I'm just a guy that's got stolen identity, and guys like Warren Buffett are still stealing from me. And going all the way back to 2008, when we hit economic recession in our country and trying to build back up a great economy. And if you want to talk anything from Black Rock to Blackwater, I can do that too. Been there, done that. And, it's all part of my life. Suffering from PTSD from the extreme attacks. Said Warren was my friend. Well, he used to be at one point in time, until that him and his family stole from me, him and Charlie Munger. And when I divided up my stock share portfolio, and it's kind of like, they're stealing Bank of America, they're stealing U.S. Bank. Little old town I helped to build their water system in, and help build a water system in, help buy them donate charitably their city library to them. And there was this here deal where it was 2 young children on a early Sunday morning. They were getting ready to go to church or whatever, and there was a drunk driver hit them head on. So it killed them both. And I stepped up on that, and I ended up buying a bar, closed it down, and turned it into a family restaurant. Did that just to try to clean up a town and try to say no more. But, until you've seen a lot of death and destruction held to hands of dying, sick children, don't try to patronize me on things or play my life down, because I don't, and I take it very serious. And when you got people out there, I don't care if it's your grandma, grandpa, whoever, a lot of these sick, dying kids, and yes, some of the feet for the Special Olympics, with carbon fiber, I have 50% patents of carbon fiber. I developed some of those for Special Olympics and stuff like that. Worked on early robotics. Had affiliation, ownership in a company, Martin Robotics, and some others, and things like that, which were partial contracts going back for veterans and those with disabilities. I even had a company one time I built the first prototypes of for disabled people. And what it was all about was being able to make availabilities for mobility for those that were paralyzed and paraplegics. But it sure did. Are there really X-Files? Yeah, there probably really are X-Files somewhere. Do aliens exist? I don't know. Look up in the sky and you tell me. In the vast universe, I've had the chance of looking through the Hubble telescope before. Matter of fact, at the time was working, I got to sit in with the James telescope and then worked on the Hubble telescope one time. One of my last projects was working on a laser guided triangulation focus system for it. So looking out into outer space, you look out into the vast amount of everything that is, and you tell me, is there aliens? Because I'm sure there's something more than what we are. Since a recorded history, there's over 4,000 religions. And I've studied a lot of religions in my lifetime and a lot of culture going all the way across the world. And people are very single-minded in what they believe and what they think. And it's a great big world. And not everybody's all right, and not everybody's all wrong. Yeah, well, I'm old enough to be who I am, and I'm old enough to have written a part of history, and I'm old enough to have written a lot of government legislation, and I'm old enough to have helped change the entire world in my lifetime, and that is a truth and a fact. And you see how evil people really are. People, when it all comes down to money, they all want to steal your entire life away. And all those people that threaten me and attempts on my life, they threaten me I'll never be heard from or seen again. They threatened to murder me, and some of them actually tried several times. And they all stole entire Department of Defense contracts. They stole my business. They stole my real estate. They stole private personal aircraft. They wiped out my entire life, and they want me to be silent about it? No. What would make me a target? I was wealthy, socioeconomic standards. So I became a target, and they all attacked me. And there really is that much massive amounts of organized crime in the United States. And, at the time, I had women's initiative programs going on. Matter of fact, I handpicked Ivanka Trump. I handpicked Michelle Obama and Melinda Gates to help me on it. And that was all the way back in 2016. I had world hunger outreach programs going on. Millions of my own money put back into things. I never batted an eye at helping people. If people, it didn't matter who they were, if they called me and said they needed help, I helped them. And, I've provided a lot of homes over to people, give them a house when they had nothing, give them food when they had nothing. And, and I sit in the woods. You know why? Because of mass amounts of corruption. You know what it's like going to a police department and trying to report your bank account being stolen for the third, fourth time? It's all a pretty serious situation. Or do you know what it's like going to a sheriff's department and asking for help, and instead they terrorize you? Yeah, it's been pretty much all that. Or trying to go through a federal agency that they've already got all the evidence sitting on a federal DA's office on their desk with all the evidence, and nobody will still help you? Yeah, it's a pretty big issue. So it's like working on all the things for the storms and being a storm chaser and all that. I've done all that too. Matter of fact, at the time, weather control techniques with Saudi Arabia. I sure did. I've worked with Saudi Arabia on weather control techniques back in the day and ways of helping to bring moisture content back to arid, dry regions and things like that. Who's the most crooked politician? I have no idea, but I know the ones that have been crooked and corrupt to me. Why don't I contact Cavazel for help? Because I can't seem to contact anybody. I mean, I used to know all the rich, famous people, all the celebrities, and the whole 9 yards. I can't contact anybody. And, when people try to hack all your communications, I mean, I got reports right here in my hand that I tried to send through fax machines to the SEC about my stolen stock shares and stuff, and was unable to even make connection. It's like everything I do, these people trying to hack me and wipe out my entire life. Yep, I'm on TikTok. Am I the real Rambo? No, I'm not the real Rambo. I'm just me. But there's a lot of people that have taken to stealing from me. I mean, it's like Navy Federal Credit Union. This makes the second time they stole my Navy Federal. They stole USAA. They're stealing my retirements, my pay, my benefits. And it was a massive criminal organization of people doing all this. I had numerous contracts. I've worked on, clarifier type projects and things like that for wastewater treatment and all kinds of cool things, but who drew first blood? It wasn't me. Yeah, I am a legend. That is a fact. Motorcycle designs, things like the V-Rod. I did all the contracting on it, worked on numerous motorcycle designs, ATV designs. The first Polaris Razor. I built the first prototype of Polaris Razor, and I do have ownership in Polaris. Matter of fact, I had ownership in Polaris defense contracts, also stolen. Can-Am, did a lot of stuff with Can-Am also. Helped work with Honda, Yamaha, KTM. Worked with Harley Davidson. Worked with all kinds of stuff. And, it was a huge life of it. But, the problem is, and I see some of the people with the comments they're leaving on here, those are the kind of people that are problems. And that's why I'm in this situation. is because, you know, you have 97,000 still missing children in the United States of America, and you don't think that evil don't exist? You don't think evil don't exist? Those are the same kind of sickos and psychos and serial killers and people that unalive people. And let me tell you, there's federal prisons and state penitentiaries all full of bad people. And, you know, people that want to be a problem and put you down and harassment instead of being helpful. You know, and how you change the world, you don't change the world by being a piece of shit. You change the world by being a good person and standing strong as we the people. And you take a great idea and you grow it and you see it through to fruition. And that is how leadership and innovation is achieved in this world. It's just like, you know, I mean, I used to study and implement some of the Kaizen theories, you know, the shepherd's window and all that kind of stuff through business and all kinds of things like that, you know. But here's the deal, I've known everybody, and they all know who I am. And to be sitting here going through this for the third time in my life being robbed. And, you know, it's just like, you know, Joplin, Missouri, I can go all the way back and, you know, still remember, you know, going down to the candle vigils and going down with the kids. And, you know, these people had lost their family members, death and destruction. By the time you picked up dead bodies with your own hands and you've had to walk up to somebody and tell them, hey, we're sorry that, you know, your loved ones are gone. You know, that takes a toll on you. And when you've seen the worst of the worst in this world, let me tell you, it really is bad. And, you know, all these here hurting people, I've been hurt a lot. You know, I paid my share in taxes, most certainly have. I've donated state and federal lands, wildlife preservation, did all that. I've even worked on deer and turkey restocking, helped stock some armadillos one time, and that was all because of the soil projects of antimicrobials in the soil. You know, here's how evil really is. Okay, so you get all these harsh chemicals they're spraying on your crops and things like that. Well, I tried to work a project of saving all the jobs because the tobacco industry had fell off. And I tried to work this here entire industry around the tobacco industry to create what's called nicotinoids. And to make a biologically friendly, environmentally friendly, and biologically friendly pesticide that would treat at an antimicrobial level of crops using nicotine. And it was a great thing. It supplied the tobacco industry still. But chemical manufacturers, they don't want to see good things like that. It's kind of like when, you know, I helped develop some of the first LED lighting. Yep, I sure did. And when we moved into newer technologies, the older people and older companies didn't want to see that happen. Matter of fact, the Sylvania plan at the time, they went apeshit over it because they didn't want to lose revenues. Well, you know, I mean, changing technologies is always a step ahead, but you have no choice. So, you know, that's the whole thing. You know, I am who I say I am. You know, I've known everybody rich and famous and all in between, and government and world leaders, royalties and kings and queens. I've known them all. And in the past, I had royal titleships given to my name. So has anything been respected me as an internationally protected person, a veteran, that most certainly for decades of my life honored my country and stood up, stepped out, and to fight against evil? No, they haven't. Once again, you know, I'm a victim of all this. And, you know, it only takes a handful of really bad people to mess up everything. And when people are greedy, evil, and power hungry, you know, I was never about to fame. I could have been famous, and I chose the path of being humble instead. Was that wrong? Probably so. Maybe I should have took the path of being famous. But instead, I wanted to be humble because I had a lot of things to achieve and accomplish. And a lot of that was rebuilding the infrastructure of the United States of America. From doing fiber optics, communications, transportation, growing jobs and economy that supply millions and billions of jobs. So, working in all the construction industry and stuff like that, things that make your lives better each day, yep, done that too. And you know, business, the thing about business, the higher up the ladder you climb, no matter what it is, it gets evil. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. The farther you go, the dirtier it gets with some people. And, Elon Musk, I know Elon. Matter of fact, Elon helped me invest in some condominiums down on a place called Echo Bluff State Park in the middle of Missouri. And at the time, they used to hold a party down there called Swagstock. All the stoners all over the U.S., it was kind of like, I guess, pretty much like Woodstock used to be. But it was down on the Ozark Scenic National Riverways. Well, I don't know what happened, but the EPA got involved, DNR got involved, DEA got involved because there was a lot of illicit drugs going on and stuff. Anyway, the state ended up seizing the property. They came to me and said, what do we do with this? And I said, hey, I'll build a great big house on it, I'll buy it out. I bought it out and built a big house on it. At first was going to be one of my retirements. And the state didn't quit until they finally coerced me into making a charitable donation because I had a big heart. And I made a charitable donation and worked on the improvement and development and engineering of all of that area to make a state park, which, I thought, what better thing can I do in this world than share my life with other people and the enjoyment and the pleasure for generations to come. So that's what I did, and I helped to donate back to the state of Missouri. The same thing that I've done all out throughout the eastern coast. I can take you when I worked with universities up in the northern states and stuff like that. So ask the Cherokee Nation. I did all the government legislation and all the legal work for them when I had controlling stock options of Jeep. And I got them to be able to retain rights of payout back to the use of their tribal name, the Cherokee. That's a true story. Just like up north, some of the other nations, Indian tribes and stuff like that. And I used to be a respected brother of the National Indian Tribal Council and had all my cards and stuff like that, and it was all stolen. But anyway, there was one of the companies, there was a major mining technology company up in some of the northern states that was polluting so bad that they had killed and caused a lot of sickness and death in the tribes. Well, they were polluting all their tribal lands and stuff like that, so it became a big issue. I helped work their government legislation. Just like in the state of Missouri, one of my own companies I have ownership in is called Doe Run Company. And I bought it out many years ago, and it's still being stolen from me, but I helped build it also. And anyway, they aggravated me one time because of the lead poisoning, heavy metals poisoning, and I helped shut down 2 facilities. One was called Glover, and the other one was called Herculaneum. Why? Because it was killing people. That pisses me off. I don't like to see people get hurt, and I don't like to be a victim, and I don't like to see other people be a victim, period. But it's not bragging. I'm not bragging about anything. I'm just trying to get my life back together. I'm a victim. People tried to murder me, and so they stole my entire life away, and I'm sitting out here. I have no food to eat. I got a bottle of water left, and they're stealing my pay and retirements and benefits, stealing my companies, and stealing my stock, shares, holdings, and everything that I worked for in my life that I can't even provide for my basic needs. And I've tried to report the crimes, and nobody's done anything. And they play the phone tree game, and you call one to call one, contact another, and you go to the police department and they say contact the feds. You try to contact the feds, and it's like trying to find the elusive platypus out there or something. You can't get a hold of these people. And it's like nobody does anything. I got billion-trillion-dollar crimes happening and being stolen, and these other people that are doing it, they're living happily ever after. They don't care. I'm in a fight for my life right now. And just don't pay your taxes. They'll come see you. I always paid my taxes, and I've supplied the jobs of a lot of people that are in government right now. That is a fact and the truth, and I've paid billions into taxes over my lifetime. And the companies that I have ownership, they have most certainly paid their taxes. So, the economics of things, that used to be one of my specialties. I helped finish up all I-44 highway, Interstate 44. I sit on economic development boards of major cities. I go back to some of these places and they just want to play stupid because now that it's all peaceful and prosperous and gaining in revenues, they want to forget who you are. Well, guess what? I didn't forget who I am. I don't mind giving to charity. I didn't mind doing anything that I ever did in my life to help other people. And kindness. I didn't have, even these storms, when the storms, all these major storms hit, nobody had a place to live. FEMA couldn't keep up. The government couldn't keep up. I stepped in with a lot of my money and bought out camper trailers and everything else and just give to people. Said, here you go. It's free. You don't owe me nothing. Just if I ever need your help, help me. And let them keep them. You know, that's what it was all about. You know, I mean, I've even built amusement parks. I used to have ownership in St. Louis Cardinals. All kinds of stuff like that. And I stepped away to try to honor my country. So what can I do to help you? Well, obviously I need some help. I need some real friends. I need some help financially. I need some help making a contact with a law firm or something. I can't just sit out here and die. I mean, with all the massive threats against me and all the other people that's stealing my entire life away, it's gotten to be a little bit old. You know, I used to have military pilot license and civilian. I used to fly and design. They stole it, and one of the places I'm sitting here, just about 100 miles south of me, I went to re-up on some of my civilian pilot license training and my renewal, and they hacked into their computer systems and stole all of my documents and hacked the FAA. Not to mention the fact that I had a private aircraft and a very famous musician and her boyfriend stole a private jet airplane from me out of the state of Tennessee, of which I also had planned on retiring and traveling around in an RV, and they stole 2 RVs from me. So, you know, I've been, you know, sitting at the leadership of all these here billion-dollar companies, built them, the technologies all my entire life. Who gave me the necklace? I bought it myself. Why? Because I like it. But anyway, you know, it's just been one of those things that I'm a victim. This makes a 3rd time, and these people are organized crime. Would any of you people like to have your retirement stolen that you took bullets for? That you stared death in the eyes and they steal your pay to where you don't even have the availability to have a meal to eat? You can't even survive or take care of your own basic needs? I'm sitting here in a Jeep that I helped design and had controlling stock options on in a company that I helped to revolutionize and change. And they stole it too. I'm sitting here talking to you on a device that I have ownership in and created and built the company for over 30 years. And they steal it too. And still stealing from me today. So you don't think people won't end your life over $1 billion? You got another thing coming. You people are absolutely insane that wouldn't think that these people are that cruel and evil. Yes, I did create the Apple iPhone. That is a fact. And all the touch capacitive screens and stuff like that was all my stuff. And I can tell you the very people that I work with. And when first getting some of the kind of this stuff started, I wanted to supply the local mom and pop shops, local machine shops and stuff like that was taking care of all the milling of the aluminum bodies and all that kind of stuff. And the company just grew so big that couldn't do that anymore. So yeah, I don't have any friends. I don't have any family. I don't have anybody. You know, I did my job, and there's aspects of my job and career I can't talk about, and I'm not allowed to because it would be illegal, and I can't violate law and policy and rules and regulations. I suffer for it, but, you know, I mean, is what it is. Yep, the iPods, and the social media, yes. I started off, MySpace would have been the premier social media website at the time. And, you know, because I did create music CDs, same thing there. And when I started getting into the new technologies of digital age and digital TV, yep, I knew Steve Jobs and Lorraine Powell. That is a fact and a truth. And matter of fact, it was my choice. I personally brought Steve Jobs back to help me at the time because I believed in him and knew he was he was a guy that could help make it happen. Steve is a little bit of a psychopath, but he was a good guy, you know, was. I used to know his family. I helped even reunite him and his daughter, his estranged daughter back then. But yep, I knew everybody. And, you know, I mean, yep, I don't have any cash. You want to talk about Oklahoma? I did all the original planning when it was nothing but Health and Human Services. When we didn't have a Homeland Security Department, I did all the emergency response planning for Oklahoma City after some of the events many years ago. So I've seen some stuff and been there and done that. Zuckerberg, Why did Zuckerberg? Now, I had part ownership in Facebook, helped build it too. Zuckerberg is a brilliant individual. He's a hardworking fellow. You know, I can't take nothing away from him on that aspect, but he did take away from me my affiliation, my part with Facebook. Like Oculus was originally my project. You know, I'm not going to say that these people aren't good people and brilliant people, but what they did, they stole from me. And one man attacked by all these people, it's been pretty serious. Nope. I knew Mark from some of the history. Mark was not even going to college at the time, and he was getting into computers and tech. And I specifically told Mark, I said, Mark, you know, as you're moving forward with this, get your education, finish up your education, grow your career. You know, I used to have a lot of respect for him. He was a brilliant kid back then. Nope, it's not the gift of gab. It's the real deal. I can promise you that. I mean, I helped develop the F-22s, F-35s, the Ospreys, the B-2 Stealth. Worked in all that kind of stuff. I worked in nuclear energy. I even helped, do all the stuff with Callaway Nuclear Plant when it was building. But then again, I helped write nuclear policies and part of Homeland infrastructure for the United States. Did that also. The thing, I put a value on human life. And, one time there was one of these rich people that's still stealing from me today that asked me one time and said, why would I want to step out and help people? Why? That I would never go anywhere in life or be anything if I help people. And I told him, I said, you know what? It's my money. I can do what I want with it. You're just a guy that I hired to help manage you and your company. And here's what I want to do. Well, you can see how that turned out. They're still stealing from me today. And some of those cancer treatment centers, yep, I built those, financed them, charitably, did that. Do I regret it? Nope. They save lives every day. And some of the things I've worked on in my life, they save a lot of lives. Medical advancements going all the way back to ultrasound technologies in the medical field help do that. Nope, I did have all my medals, and I did have my DD-214, and when I was working on the IT website design of the new e-benefits, they stole everything I had, and so I had a lot of my career going on, and that's the thing, when you work a lot of things that you have to worry about, economic espionage and economic terrorism, theft of intellectual properties, going all the way back to the wars with Huawei. There's always been the wars with the mobile devices and stuff like that. These are big driving economies. And I know because it's all part of my life, and I did most of the planning around it. College, where did I go to college? I went to numerous colleges. And they're also stealing my college degrees. And I went to military academy also. And other than that, I used to be that brilliant. I used to be able to, I had the mind of a steel trap. I could tell you all the mathematical formulas and all kinds of stuff. That's been long gone. It's kind of like programming. You don't do it every day. You lose your touch. But what I did, I stepped into humanity and trying to save lives. And trying to save the lives of my American people and those across the world, and trying to make a better world. And trying to grow economy, provide jobs, and the safety and well-being of prosperity. That's what I tried to do because I was that blessed. Ownership in foreign domestic oil companies. Yep. Matter of fact, it's like shows like American Idol. Helped develop those kind of shows. Survivor, Naked and Afraid, all these here Barnwood Builders, the Duck Commanders. I used to know all them. I used to know all these people, And a lot of people I gave them the opportunity of a lifetime to become famous. And I sure did. But Congressman, at the time when I went in, the military academy was in 1988. And I was 14 years old. And from there, the guy that actually helped me from the Reagan administration, because I used to know Ronald Reagan, and the guy that helped me from the Reagan administration, and I even got to stand in Red Square. I used to know Gorbachev, used to know Putin, used to know all these people, world leaders all over the world. And Bill Clinton at the time, when I started going up through military, he got me involved into space engineering and aeronautics. I got to go to space camp, started working with NASA and stuff. And then I got into aeronautics, and I took all my business and started doing a lot of stuff with contracting at the time, and started working in a lot of aspects of that. So actually, Bill Clinton actually is one of the guys that got me into space engineering and aeronautics to start with. And after that, I've known all our past presidents, our families, and some of them I even helped run security detail for. I run security for Princess Diana back in the day. And I run security for Michael Jackson one time, too. Tried to help all these people, I'm not going to talk bad about anybody, but all I can say is that I'm a victim of a whole lot of crimes going on. This makes the third time in my life. And they started attacking me 9.5 years ago. They didn't let up. People are still stealing aspects of my life today. I'm supposed to be retired, running business. I got money sitting in the bank. I did my job above and beyond. Helped save a lot of lives and helped solve a lot of problems. And I suffered for it greatly. And you want to talk about things like about the congressmen? I used to know congressmen, state reps, senators, past presidents. I used to know everybody up through big government. And I have worked out of Washington, D.C. Matter of fact, I used to have property, townhouse up on the Potomac River, which is still up and missing to this day. And, yeah, maybe so, but I don't care. People shouldn't have done me wrong. They shouldn't have stolen my entire life away. That's just how it is. These are economic crimes, and they're serious crimes, and I would like to have what belongs to me. 10 minutes away from D.C., well, I can tell you this, in 2008, I helped restore the east wing of the Capitol and design and engineering on all that and restoration of the United States Capitol. I did that. And a whole lot of other things. Been there, done that. And, I tried to pour back my heart, soul, and energy into the American people. Did this all over the world. What else can I say? Nope. 90% of my claims, they're all true, buddy. Wherever you are, they're all true, they're all fact, and they're all 100%. I don't lie about my life, and I don't lie about my accomplishments and achievements. And I don't lie about the dead fallen, and I don't lie about all the death and destruction and disease that I've seen in my life, nor do I lie about being a victim of some of the most historical, largest crimes in decades of United States history. It is what it is. Just because I was a real anonymous and lived my life very classified and very quietly, that's the fact and truth. That is a fact and a truth. I've worked in developing weapon calibers, all kinds of stuff like that. Firearm designs, a lot of modern technology, period. A lot of inventions that are still on the shelves today. I got 50%, 50% partial patents in Bluetooth technologies too with Sony Ericsson. Did all that kind of stuff too. So all these major companies and corporations, what they're trying to do, now you want to talk about, I helped run a federal investigation on guys like Bernie Madoff at one point in time when he was stealing $65 billion. Pissed me off because I had investments there and he stole from me. Still haven't recovered on it either, even after filing all the documents, and they stole my payout back from all of my investments and stole my documents and paperwork. Really a true story too. So, it's been a while. Been there, done all that. All I can say is I honored my country. And the fact is I've seen enough horrible things and been a victim of enough in my lifetime. It's why I was supposed to be retired and living life happily and at peace. It's kind of strange that one of the secretaries I hired out to help me recover missing children one time, she took to stealing a bunch of documents, stealing about $900 million from me. That's really the truth. I trusted some of these people and they wiped my life out. And I fell off into a bad set of circumstances because I had PTSD. And just like Boeing turbine engine designs, those were some of mine too. And I had ownership in commercial airlines. And the part in the insurrection on the Capitol didn't have nothing to do with it. Don't know nothing about it. What I can tell you is these people are all taking part in crimes, and I hold my government responsible. It's been a deprivation of rights under color of law. It's been extreme discrimination. It's been violations of the 14th Amendment, equal protections. It's been violations of business law. And yes, I have had some of the nation's leading law firms in on this before. Matter of fact, one of the last times, Judge Engeron, he knows all about it. And he's a big justice, and he knows all about it. They all know all about it. That's a fact. Truth. Been there, done that. And anyway, right now, yeah, I'm supposed to have, they stole one of my original phone numbers that was connected to my accounts. Because when you're original founder of Bitcoin and wrote the original white papers and did all this here to grow a new economy when we were crashing out in this country, and you want to take this all the way back to Gaddafi, you want to take this to the Federal Reserve's United States Treasury Department, I can do that too. Gold standard, yep, I can do that too. So, been there, done that on all this planning. And for the last, I guess they started attacking me in late 2015, and it hasn't stopped. And for about the last 3 years solid, I've been fighting for my life, traveling around, trying to get resolution to the situation and get some help. And most of my time has been spent fighting for my life survival, trying to get help against the vast amounts of corruption, public corruption, and those taking part in crimes. And it's not easy. And these people targeted me and they terrorized me. And that's really the truth, and that's the only way I can say it. And how much is Bitcoin worth today? Probably around, I don't know, last I knew, probably 29,000. It ranges anywhere from 46 to 29, something like that. But anyway, is what it is. Well, then obviously it's went up. I haven't checked it in a while because my wallets are stolen. And just like every other aspect. But all this here kind of stuff, I'm going back to the PayPal mafia. Yeah, it's true. eBay, I had affiliation, ownership in eBay, helped create it. All these companies. Sure did. Yep, not even close, Chad. Well, I am who I am. Just because I can't remember details that I haven't looked up for a while and stayed up with while I'm stranded out alongside the highway while y'all are making snod, hateful remarks about stealing my entire life away and thinking it's funny to suffer as a victim of all this. You know? I don't know, that's just what I knew that it fluctuated in. But anyway, do you need me to come get you? Any help would be really cool right now. I don't even have any way to get any money. I couldn't even accept a donation if I tried. They finished stealing one of the last debit cards that I had over the weekend, and I can't even access it. So I have no food. I have no money. I got money sitting in banks all around me. I can't get the FBI to do their job. I can't get any of the federal agencies to do their job. The VA won't do their job. Department of Finance and Accounting Services won't do their job. Department of Contract Audit Agency, DCAA, out of Belleville won't do their job. They're stealing my contracts. SEC won't do their job, and they're stealing my stock shares. And, you know, all this here kind of stuff, you know. So I'm eligible for all my retirements and stuff, and the federal government has been really shitty. Yep, a pity party? Yeah, it actually is. And you know what? When it happens to you, when, you know, you all people think that you're invincible. But what are you going to do when it's you, when you're walking down the street and somebody shoots you? When you're mugged? When you have no friends or family? What are you going to do when it's you that's been robbed? You know? It's just like going back, you know, all that hashtag Me Too thing. And why the key fobs exist? Why the T's right here exist? Is simply due to the fact that at the time, women were getting raped in the streets. And then I helped develop the rape whistle. And, you know, and that was a big new thing. And helped do a lot of this here Criminal Control Act and, you know, trying to fight crime and stuff like that when people had to walk in fear of their lives and their safety of their lives and women and children. And that eventually developed into, technologies, when I started coming up with radio wave technologies, and I do have patents on LCD and LED screens, all that kind of stuff. Well, got together with other engineers and we collaborated together on a lot of things, and technology just started growing, and that's how great things happen. You come up with one good idea, build it, and then you continue growing on that and building it over. That's how innovation and leadership is achieved, and that's how I accomplished all that I have. It's just like all these technologies. When going from Microsoft, iOS, and other computer platforms, ranging from Python and I don't know, some of the others out there that I used to work on. Linux, Python, iOS, used to work on all that, used to work on Android, used to work on all of them. I was really good at it, used to be. And I used to actually teach people how to do all this kind of stuff, and was one of the founding fathers of AI. And people took that and they have grown and expanded. I mean, there's an entire world full of brilliant people out there that have taken what has been pioneered, and wow, what they've done today with it is mind-blowing, some of the newer technologies. I mean, there's brilliant people out there. But point being, I am who I say I am. And the plasma TV, that came about. I started working on it with some others, and it was on studies into free energy. And I was also working on stuff with electromagnetics and different stuff like that, opposing force fields. And, the things that nobody could ever see or understand was the things that used to intrigue me, and those are the things that I always stay busy working in. So, Nikola Tesla was one of my heroes. That's like studying Da Vinci, Nikola Tesla, and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. I am who I say I am, and I'm just worth a lot of money. And I tried to trust a lot of people. They took advantage of me. I was very kind and generous. I helped my nation. I helped everybody that I could. I used to be a very well-educated man. Still am. I've forgotten most of, the mathematical formulas and all the details of things, but, I sure didn't forget. Oh, you see. So, CERN, Halliburton, DARPA, and HARP? Yep, I sure do. I actually got to work on CERN at one point in time. Halliburton, yep. I know all about Halliburton because that goes back to oil business ownership. And DARPA, I've worked with DARPA before. Yep, sure have. And X-Force. Sure did. Matter of fact, I used to talent scout in universities for those that had the availability and the skill set to be able to represent the United States of America in national defense. Sure did. So, yeah, I know all about it. Matter of fact, in 2014-15, I started doing some stuff with donations into HARP and the universities and the state of Alaska. Just like what's her name? Used to be the congressman up there in Alaska. But yeah, I used to know everybody. Keeping up with it all has been very difficult. Are you sitting in the rain? Yep, I'm sitting in the rain. What I need right now would be really nice if tell these good people how you went to Ukraine with. Well, I actually have been to Ukraine before. It's been a while. But all that goes back to rare earth minerals. And how do I know all this? Because in all the cell phone technology and the stuff with the federal gold standard, and because as technology advances, everybody has a need for gold because semiconductors and everything else and all your computer chips and microchips and new technology that depends on precious metals. Just like I worked an investigation on the entire London Metal Exchange, which is called the LME. And what they were doing, they were scamming because of time zonings and everything else, and they were basically costing the United States of America and the small people, when you buy a pound of nails, to building supplies, to construction-grade equipment, to whatever. Auto manufacturers, it didn't matter. And it was causing a mass influx on precious metals and corrosion-grade markets, and was costing billions. Obviously, everybody else was turning into multimillionaires and billionaires overnight by scamming the stock markets and precious metals and corrosion-grade markets. I tried to do my best to put an end to it because not only was they getting rich, it was scamming other people that were investing in companies like this and ownership and my own companies. And it was also affecting all the other manufacturers out there and people and the common people. I mean, it had a trickle-down effect of into the hundreds of billions over time going nationally and internationally with international trade markets. So it's just like when we did the original NAFTA and United States, Canadian, Mexico agreements. I personally had affiliation with the music industry also. And as an act of faith into saying, well, adhere to these agreements, I got together with my affiliation through Fender and put one of the Fender Squier guitar plants in Mexico as an honorary agreement to their government that we would, be in good fair trade agreements with them. So, yep. Think you work for Blackwater too? Oh, I probably know some things about Blackwater. Might know some things about it. I used to stand at military command, and just to say the least, that I did my job and I protected a lot of people, and I'd still do it again today. And let me tell you, it is what it is. But you try to be a good man and you try to live your life with honor and bravery. And people forgot, I worked to even help expand our United States Purple Heart program. Why? Because people that put their lives on the line every day deserve the honor and respect and loyalty back to them. Because until you've ever been there and done that, don't ever speak up. Because, here's the thing. In war, no matter what it is, your end goal is peace, period. You want to minimize cost and casualty, and your end goal is peace, even if you have to go to war. And, that's a sad thing of why we have to have military alliances, why we have to have NATO, why we have to have the United Nations, why we have to have all these things in place in the United States national defense, just like other nations have national defense of their own countries. Because it eventually gets to the point that, say, if you're not in compliance, then other actions will have to be taken. And it's usually, people don't like to hear this, but, I seen a clip of a DOD contractor on here the other day. It said, sometimes it is only with the threat of violence does positive actions change. And that's because some people really are horrible human beings and they just don't get it that enough is enough. And you can only attack somebody and be a horrible human being for so long until eventually something has to be done about that. But your end goal is always peace. And you take all the things that are going on all across the world, and right now we are as close to world peace as we've ever been. Amicable relationships and things like that, But did I know Hillary Clinton used to be CEO of Walmart? No, she didn't. I actually knew the Walton bunch, and I knew Sam and Bud, and I knew Paige Laurie, I knew Alice Walton. Matter of fact, I did all the security system setups for Walmart, and about 150 miles south of me here, I picked up a check off of a Air Force federal base at a security checkpoint for doing a lot of regional distribution planning for them and setting up all their security systems, and was paid out directly, a big check by Alice Walton and Walmart directly to me that I put in the bank, cashed and put in the bank, and they're stealing that bank account too. Really a truth. But that's a fact. When was the last time I watched the news? I'm not sure that I've actually seen real news, because most of it is all fake. And, there's this thing that I'm sure if you would do your research that you could figure out that propaganda is one of those things they introduced as propaganda being okay on American citizens, but it's not. It's become very dangerous, and false information, false fake news media is dangerous. And, the influx capacitor, no, but I did work on some of the newer designs of that. Going back all the way, I did a project with the University of Tennessee, and, the influx capacitor, no, but I did work on some of the newer designs of that. Going back all the way, I did a project with the University of Tennessee. And let's see, with Ameren UE, Blackwater, or Black River Electric, going back, I did some of the hydroelectric dams, Duke Energy, things like that, and had, some of this stuff on nuclear energy planning back then. Yeah, I have worked in some of the earlier aspects of some of that in my career, but it's been a while. Been a long while, matter of fact. But, the last decade of my life has been struggling, fighting for my own life. Do I know McFly? Marty McFly? Back to the Future? Yep. I used to know him, Michael J. Fox. I sure did. Matter of fact, he came and put on a basketball game as Teen Wolf maybe back in the day at one of the high schools I used to go to. Sure did. That's the truth. And yeah, I used to know everybody in Rich and Famous. But like toy designs, that's how I got my starting career. That's how I started out, was designing toys and video games, computers and technology. And then I got into the big boys game of Department of Defense contracting, government and world events and international events and organizations. And I tried to do good things in the world and run good operations and be a very intelligent guy. And you see where it landed me. Everybody else walks away with my entire life. I'm alone, no friends, no family, no help, hungry. Once again, 3 times in my life I've been through this. You know, so to say that shitty human beings don't exist in the world, you'd be sadly mistaken, because they do. And a lot of times they look. So tell me, if all y'all making all those hateful, rude comments are such good people, tell me where all those 97,000 still missing, unaccounted for children are that should be an epidemic in the entire United States right now. You want to make snide comments, then I suggest you do it about that. That's like law enforcement people. I can't be down on all these folks. There's some really good people out there, and some of them are amazing people. Your emergency response teams and stuff like that, they save a lot of lives every day, and they're the people that you depend on when you need somebody. Some of them are not so good, and I can tell you that. Claim the credit for what? Do I think there's a cure for cancer? I can tell you that I was personally working on cures for cancer. And here's the deal, because here's the thing. Cancer cells have what is known as an electrical impedance. And cellular, the way that it does it is a cancer cell replicates and it can heal itself. And it also has a lower tolerance. So, and basics of electrical stimulus energy. So if you know anything about the human body is one great big battery. And it is through the synapses of the neurons in the brain and everything else, you're one big battery. So that's why keeping your body healthy and alkaline, that all these things within your body regulate your heartbeat with potassium, all your metals, all your minerals. I mean, from the dirt you came and from the dirt you go back. So all these here kind of things are really, really important. But the cures for cancer, yes, I do believe, because all these things lay dormant in the human body, that, I still have this unique theory within medicine that I had an uncle, and I helped develop some of the advanced dialysis techniques. He was dying, kidney failure. He never did get a kidney donor. He ended up dying on dialysis. But anyway, I helped develop some of the early techniques on advanced dialysis techniques. Well, at the same time, I carried some of those other studies that I was working on into studies of being able to maybe take and to be able to circulate the body, all the blood throughout the bloodstream, and treat with ultraviolet radiation, and that would interrupt the cellular, basic electrical impedance value of a cancer cell and destroy it. And then carry a mild amount of radiation back through the capillaries all in throughout the entire body, which would basically attack the entire body with a different way of introducing a type of radiation, treating the bloodstream, like through leukemia, and had carried some of these studies on into stem cell researches, which was going back into the things with bone marrow. And bone marrow, some of the master stem cell, master DNA code all comes from basically the male human chromosomes and genomes. And if you're anything into genetics, XX, XY, YX, all those different kind of things, which goes back to genetic modified food crops, GMO, DeKalb, and all that, which DeKalb originated from partial patents out of GMO to begin with. So all this stuff gets pretty rough, but I've got stuff that goes all the way back with Monsanto, Bayer, and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, here's the deal. Yes, I do believe that cancer can someday be cured. I do believe that. But here's the deal: it has to be within a specific range of time. And, you think about all these things biologically, and I had done early studies into the chemical processes in the body. Like, everybody knows about puberty. So what makes a girl into a woman and a boy into a man? Well, these here chemical processes in the body, it's the same thing that causes your cartilage to grow, your hair to grow, the same things that causes your fingernails to grow, and the same chemical in your body that causes when you're, getting rid of your teeth at the first sign of aging, going from adolescent to adulthood, you lose your baby teeth. So that same chemical compound that's within the body that causes all this growth stimulation and growth hormones in the body, that can be replicated and possibly towards new medical breakthroughs today. It's still a lot of things that are in the works that I had been working on, but I know there's other industries that have picked up on some of this kind of stuff and things like that, but this used to all be a part of my life, and it was part of who I was, and I used to have rolling labs. I had these big trailers pull into me, and I had a rolling lab in it, and I would go and work for a few hours and do my thing and study under microscopes or whatever, and one thing to the other. That's just the way it was. What state am I in? I'm in Alabama right now. I'm outside of Tuscaloosa. Just kind of stranded right now. I don't really know what to do. It's, just like the bank down here in Tuscaloosa at a Truist Bank. I had a bank account there, going all the way back. And obviously it's been stolen also, just like they stole some of my other bank accounts that I most certainly worked for and put my life energy into. And, some of this kind of stuff, I didn't mind helping people. I would give people the shirt off my back. And I have before. And I can take you down to Louisiana, when the storms hit down there in Louisiana. And that whole town was flooded. Golly, I've chopped people out of the tops of roofs, saved a lot of lives. Was there through all that. Been there through all these here major storms and tornadoes and hurricanes. And was hoping on ways to be able to actually destroy and kill a hurricane. I still have a lot of ideas on that, and that revolves around supercooling, superheating, being able to go in. It would take the Department of Navy, Department of Air Force to be able to do so. But because you got to have the flight technology to be able to get to the center in the eye of a storm. But that revolves around, I had worked projects concerning liquid nitrogen, for example. So to be able to conduct small experiments with liquid nitrogen and to be able to make it like basically a balloon that would explode. So you have two choices. You could explode that with an in-air detonation with liquid nitrogen to supercool or superheat. So you have all your gases like argon, all your oxygen, all, helium, everything that's contained in oxygen at, basic atomic levels. So all of this here has a process, and it all stages out. So when you interrupt basics of electrons, neutrons, going all the way back into static, negative, positive particles, you can actually minimize. You can't totally destroy a hurricane, but you can lessen the effects, like the eye of it, before it would ever reach the shore and devastate the coastlines. You're still going to have a fallout and a washout. But the one thing that in initial projects that I had done, it does produce some carbon monoxide. So, you have the kind of a thing there, which, trying to figure out what the fallout ratio is, health, and would it create a cloud? Don't know. But it was early studies and things like that. So, yeah, these are kind of serious things, because when we can try to get into some of these newer technologies and things like this, anywhere from cures to cancer, newer technologies, free energy, you get into things like being able to help prevent hurricanes and some of these storms, tornadoes. That's impossible. They're too unpredictable. Dirt devils, they do what they're going to do. They're very unpredictable. But hurricanes, on the other hand, are very predictable. And I think that originally that if we stay with some of these original studies, that yes, we can prevent the multi-billions of dollars in death and destruction to the coastal areas, not only in the United States, but across the world, if we put our heads together in innovation and leadership and technologies to figure this out and study a little bit deeper into it. I really believe that. And they could possibly save a lot of lives and billions of dollars. So, have I ever launched a space shuttle? Yes, I have. I sure have. Matter of fact, I have. And I've worked on some of the rovers' equipments and done all kinds of stuff like that. And yes, all the way back, I used to be friends with Christy McLaughlin, who was a school teacher on the Challenger. Yep, I go all the way back to those days. And yep, I can take you beside Alabama NASA Space Rocket Center, show you rockets that I designed years ago, and take you to a property in Arkansas. Still has all of my military memorabilia out on the shed. The entire property is being stolen from me, but there's a nose cone of a NASA rocket sitting out front. Kind of looks like the same thing as the end forcing cone on a grain bin, but that's not what it is. It's actually a prototype design off of an old NASA rocket. And really a truth. Yeah, I used to work with NASA. And my last big works with NASA is why the No Fear Act came to be. And when I was working with NASA, some of the employees were horrible people. They tried to steal my projects. They tried to steal my intellectual property. And I stepped out and I drafted the No Fear Act. And, got my life back then. But anyway, that was all the way back before we had Homeland Security that I helped to build also. But, I know who I am, and I know where I've been, and I know what I've accomplished in this world. And, it's just like before bottled water was a big thing. They even had ownership in some bottled water companies and helped do all that. Going all the way back when I used to know some of the rich, famous people, and we did a project one time with the Cristal water, and it was this here, they would pay like $100,000 for a bottle of water. And basically what it was, at the time, it originally started out, it was a way to get around the loopholes and legalities and make charitable donations into hundreds of thousands without it being fraud or like tax loops and all that kind of crap. But it used to go for a good cause. I don't know what it is anymore. Don't know. Haven't had any affiliation with it a long time, but that's the way it used to be. And, 86, 84, I was wrong. Anyway, 1986. But yeah, that goes all the way back then. Been there, done all that. Yep, sure have. I've got some serious history. Do I know Diddy? I met him a few times, but don't really know him. So I don't really know anything about any of that going on. I used to know a lot of the other famous musicians and stuff, from heavy metal, rock and roll, rap, pop, all kinds of stuff. I used to know just about everybody, famous Hollywood actors, all in between, I knew everybody. So today, do I know what to do about anything? Nope. I'm absolutely clueless. Hopeless. And what would you all do if you're having your bank account stolen, your entire business is stolen, you go to your own property and they run you off? They're stealing your documents. There's this thing called, with a military career, and they hacked into National Database Archives, National Personnel Record Center. They hacked into critical infrastructure of the entire United States. They didn't just do that to me. Since 2015, they've done that to over 46,000 veterans. So there's a lot of people that's been attacked on that aspect. Look in the news every day, and I'm sure you'll see where there's all kinds of people running all these years scams and crimes on people. I just happen to be a victim of multi-billion, trillion-dollar crimes. That's the way it is, here's the deal. When, like Warren Buffett, I trusted his family, and I was still active military duty at the time. And when I was still anonymous and doing a whole lot of things on a classified level and things I can't talk about through both personal, private business and otherwise. But accomplished that and achieved it. But the Cancer Treatment Center in Omaha, Nebraska was originally financed with my own money and built it. And I trusted some of these people to help me manage it and to help build this. And there was a lot of other very rich, wealthy people that helped me build, along with my own money. I put hundreds of millions into this. 3 cancer treatment centers and 4 children's hospitals. And the last children's hospital was in the state of Texas, of which I was still trying to come up with another $300 million for, that I was going to just up and give them. I mean, I had the money; it belonged to me, and I was just going to give them another $300 million to finish up because it went over budget. But that's really the truth of things. And, so I've tried to give my heart and soul into my country. And, I've tried to help a lot of people, and people that had nothing, people that didn't have a home to live in. I tried to give them a home to live in. I tried to supply economy the best I knew how to change around a lot of bad situations in our country. And they listen. I mean, these people listen. They know what true knowledge, wisdom, and understanding is. And, it's just like all of our timber industry. You look around and all the agriculture. I had 4-H club. I had Department of Agriculture I've worked with, new farming techniques and all that kind of stuff. Been there, done all that. And all of my Department of Defense cattle contracts I had through at least 4 different states are all stealing that also. And when all this started, I wrote out checks and paid people up to $3 million to buy out new farmland and equipment and maintain business. And the people I trusted just up and they steal my entire business, and they steal everything I ever worked for. But some of these things, I've seen a lot of death and destruction. And one of the bad things, when Boeing, my turbine engine designs, and they started stealing them, that got really serious. And then they wiped out with all the cyber crimes. And it got to the point that, I was trying to live humbly. I had a lot of things going on I can't talk about on here. And that's just the way it is, because it's called honor and respect. And I know the legalities of the law, what I can say and what I can't say. And no matter how much suffering I go through, I'm not going to betray my country. And I'm not going to betray or put the lives of anybody in danger or at risk, period. And that's just the way it is. And that's called loyalty. And I can't be anything other than me. And that's who I've always been. And, there's a lot of different ways of communications out there with a lot of different people. I've known the good, the bad, the ugly, and all in between. And am I perfect? Absolutely not. I have my share of sins. And I'm not perfect. And I don't claim to be. But that thing about humanity, we're all in this together, and that's why they call it the human race. And I always had this thing, it's kind of like lemmings marching off a cliff. If you don't have the right leader, everybody gets behind it, and people are sheeple. And sheep will stand on one hillside. They'll go hungry. They'll go without water until the right shepherd gets to them to lead them down to safety and to food and water and to a good life. And that's why that, aspects of religion, people are referred to as sheep because they're stupid. And I call them sheeple. That's just the way it is. But anyway, I tried to do a lot of good things. And, like Bitcoin, when I had my original Bitcoin accounts and stuff like that, I have helped tons and tons and tons of people. People would call me up, hey, I need some help. What do you need? And I would test them out. Are you the real deal? Find out, yeah, okay, you're the real deal. I just give it to them. It didn't bother me. I had it. I earned my money. I was a billionaire by the time I was 18 years old. And that's truth and fact. I was a billionaire by the time I was 18. So to continue forward in a military career, international and all these kind of things, did I have to do that? No, I didn't. I chose to do that because I wanted to be an honor to my country. What more can you do in the world? I didn't do it for money, obviously, because I had already earned my part and piece of heaven in this world. And now they're stealing that also, even after all the good I've tried to do to people and all the good I've brought to this country. It's just like South Carolina. I don't have ownership in Scout, but I helped do all the planning and original structure and setup for the eastern seaboard of the Scout plant, which is going to be a multi-billion-dollar project. And I did that with Governor McMaster. And, which was going to be a great thing for the state of South Carolina, bringing out a lot of revenues. Same thing going with strategic planning and economic development. Matter of fact, there was a place in North Carolina that, I go all the way back. Kamala Harris has some interest and things with some of these lithium mines, blah, 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 blah. All these people are very intricately connected in business. Well, all of my other companies, so am I. Well, some of this here goes back economic development goes back. Economic development. I was going to put a other place in the state of North Carolina to balance out the eastern seaboard. It was a bad job economy. People are struggling to get by. They need jobs. They need economy in some of these areas. And, so I was trying to do my best to help out people. Never did get that project finished, just like Zenith. Zenith, I didn't originally own Zenith, but I do have ownership in Zenith. And Zenith was a great American company. And Zenith being a great American company in the state of Kentucky, I was actually building a new Zenith plant. And what this was try to keep, if you ever heard of BABA, now I know this here goes globally, but here's BABA. BABA was called Buy American, Build American. And that was part of government legislation and things, even goes back into some of the products that I have ownership in right now. And that I wanted to see to it to try to stabilize the American economy, because here's the thing. China is amazing. Some of these other big countries and world superpowers, they're amazing technologies and they have great economies. But here's the deal with foreign economy and trade policies as they are today, because I've worked all this, we cannot survive without one another. Without right down to your agriculture, you can't go to the supermarket. You cannot go to Walmart. You cannot go to the dollar store or any of these other places without the foreign trade policies that I have personally worked. I did all this behind the scenes my entire life. And I've done all the paperwork, a paperwork trail a mile long, right down to ethanol fuel blends. And, that was a big economy that supplied millions of jobs for all of our farmers and all this kind of stuff through croplands and farmlands, did all that. And, this here was not just to make clean and green and a part of effective, efficient energies, just like the stuff I personally worked some of this directly with Barack Obama at the time, stood shoulder to shoulder with him, worked out of the White House, out of Washington and everything else. And here's the thing, some of these here kind of things supply a lot of jobs in the economy. We had people hurting out there. We had farmers that had, their family farms going back for 100 years, mom and dad, papa, grandpa and grandma, and it was drying up and blowing away. What are we going to do? Well, these provided new opportunities of clean and green, sustainable energy sources that'll always be here forever and ever and ever. And as we continue to grow these kind of economies, that it is sustainable and that it creates economy and job source for people to be able to thrive and survive. And that's what this has all been about. That's what I set part of my life aside for, was to thrive and survive for everybody. Now look what it happened to me. I get robbed and I'm the victim by a bunch of greedy, evil people that don't know when enough is enough to stop attacking me. I'm a veteran. They stole my pay and retirements and benefits. Still going through all that. Have had no response other than having reports filed with the VA and DFAS and all these government agencies that have done nothing. I've tried contacting the DOJ. I've tried contacting DOD and all these people. They don't do nothing. I've talked to retirement specialists, the whole 9 yards, and I'm not going to back down from who I am and what I am. I did my job for my people, and I stood strong and tall for we the people, of all people, all colors, all races, and all tongues. So, I believe in the American dream, but I believe in doing it through hard work and through integrity. That's the way I live my life. And I am who I say I am. And there's a lot of naysayers out there, and there's a lot of people that'll lie, cheat, steal, and take and cake and take and take and take until there's nothing left. But all these economic developments, I went into all these places all across the United States, worked with all these towns and all these here places. And when it came to a point, it wasn't my problem. I didn't create it. But when mom and pop's shops all dried up and blowed away, and economies and towns all across the United States the only thing that was going was a major metropolis. Rural America was dying. The heartbeat of America was dead. So I said, let me take and revive this. I used to have corporate ownership in Dollar General. Well, that provided a lot of great opportunities into convenience for areas that didn't have anything, and to be able to make lives better. I used to have ownership. I used to have a McDonald's Gold Card. I did all the personal contracts with McDonald's for all their coffee contracts and all that. Going back many years, there used to be a guy, it was a family, I can't remember his name, but he was a very poor family, and I'd found out about this years ago, and I used to know Jacqueline Mars, and like does Mars candy bars. I did have some affiliation and rights to some of that also. Well, I'd found out that this here one family that they were very poor. It was really, really poor people, and what they did, they harvested cocoa beans. And the man had never actually got to taste chocolate in his entire life. Him and his family had never tasted chocolate. They'd worked in all this, harvesting all these cocoa beans their entire life, and never got to taste them. So actually, I helped, these people, helped them with their home and helped them make sure they had a taste of chocolate to see where their fruits of their labors came from. So you see, this isn't all, I can't remember if there's an article out there, if you'll look it up, but he was an old businessman I used to know from many, many, many years ago when I was just still a kid and getting into all this. But he put out a piece one time talking about a pencil and the business economy about a pencil. And that same theory holds true today. And that was a very wise man, because that pencil has to have a logger. That pencil has to have a miner. That pencil has to have a manufacturing plant. That pencil has to have workers and stability across an entire industry to make one small product. So you create an entire industry just around one product. And when you create a revolutionary industry, say like the Apple iPhones, modern technology that you hold in your hand, how you're able to talk to me today, like I personally did, that creates billions and trillions in economy. Do you know how much money all you people make by using my invention? The products that I help build and make possible for you today, and the technologies? Billions and trillions, hundreds of trillions over a lifetime going globally, that has supplied markets all over the world. So did it get to a point in my life that economic espionage was a thing? Yes, it did. A theft of intellectual properties? Oh yes, most certainly. And my entire life got to being like that I had to watch my back everywhere I went. Everything that I did, because somebody was always trying to steal from me everywhere. Be it within the United States, fellow brothers, sisters, friends, family, neighbors, my own government, or going internationally. It got to be that bad. And when you've been attacked like that and you still had all this other going on, and you've had all these other career paths and balanced all that within your lifetime, you talk about stress levels. Yeah, okay, Pontiac at the time, that was my sole decision. They left it up on me. They came to me and said, what do we do about Pontiac? It was failing, going out of business. It could no longer sustain. It was actually costing money and costing jobs than it was to pour your money back into other products and other lines. So I made a decision on that. Was I hated for it at the time? Yes, I was. And just like there was a plant in McFarland, Arkansas. It was a chemical and gas plant. And years ago, this place was going out of business. These people were losing their lives, losing their jobs, losing their entire economy, losing their communities. But it was all they had at the time. And I stepped up and I said, you know what? I dug around, and because I was anonymous, the real anonymous. And the real anonymous used to be about doing good things and helping people. So I went into this community and I evaluated it, and I looked around, got copies to all the books and stuff, and I found out that all the CEOs and stuff were crooked. They were robbing the company blind and driving it off into the red, and it was so far gone that, it couldn't be turned around. So I bought it out. I put my own money into it, paid off all the debts, and brought it back up. And the same people I entrusted on, I busted them out on it, but I entrusted them to say, okay, here's how things will be now. Stepped away into all of my other career, and they did the same thing again, run it all the way down. You know what I did? It couldn't be saved. The company could not be saved. So I went back in, and they bled them dry. There was nothing left. There was no severance package. There was no retirements. The retirement fund was gone, everything. So I took my own money and cashed out of my own bank accounts, and I set up a fund, and I actually lied. It was one of the biggest lies I ever made in my life like that, but it was all for the good. And I made up a big lie, and I said that, drew up papers and had it put back, and retroactively I falsified documents is what I did. Was it illegal? I guess technically, but it was all for the good. But I did this, and it was my money, so I could do whatever I wanted, and I had ownership of it. So it didn't matter. And there was nobody lost anything. All they did was gain. So I did all this, and I did all these here documents, and I made it look like I owed them a severance package. So what I did, I bought these people's, I paid their homes off. I gave them cash valuation severance packages and all that to make sure they were well taken care of. And, I mean, that was just an act of kindness. Did I have to do that? No. I didn't owe them people nothing. I tried to save them twice and I lost money all the way around. And, lost hundreds of millions of dollars in all this here kind of stuff. But it was for the better and it helped people. I mean, it was just like when I used to have ownership in Texas Oil, major oil companies. Years ago, the economy was kind of drying up, blowing away. I actually come up with a project called the Pipeline to Nowhere. And this pipeline at the time, they didn't know what they were doing. They were just building a pipeline. Here, I'm going to pay you to build a pipeline. It was a pipeline to nowhere. It did nothing. It served no purpose, but it gave them jobs. And when economic times turned around, I went back in with my own money and I said, here, all your properties here, I'm going to pay you double to triple what your property values are worth, relocate you into a better place and a better job and supply economy for you. And I did that. And I helped all those kind of people out. And, did I have to do that? No, I didn't. But, it was kind of that was my way of laughing out loud. It was doing good things for people that were unsuspecting. And to do those kind of things, and it was kind of a joke at the time, but it felt good doing it to help people and to make a positive difference in people's lives. And the same thing holds true. I've put roofs over people's heads that had nothing and ensured that, through some of these things, if nobody's, it's just like conservation. Nobody looks out for conservation. Everybody hates a conservation agent. Well, they're a needed necessity in the world, whether you like it or not. And can some of them be assholes who go overboard? Yep, they sure can. But there's common sense in all this kind of stuff. I mean, we live in a world today that is being developed and population is growing. So you think GMO food crops? How are you going to feed a world starving population? You think all that cattle out there, you think all the cows in the world supply all the world population? You'd be wrong. A lot of that is lab-grown meat. Truth. Just like all your crops, to be able to sustain all the agriculture that is on the markets today and to go to the supermarket, you cannot do that without genetics. Period. So, all this stuff about organic, that's really great. Organic going with the fact of trying to minimize all the harsh chemicals and pesticides. Does that piss off all the chemical companies? Yeah, it does. But is it good for the people? Yes, it's even better for the people because then you don't end up with goiter or you don't end up with cancer cells and tumors and sickness and disease. So all this here kind of stuff is interconnected that people don't talk about. Just like your nutrition food labels. When I started getting into some of this stuff years ago, why do you think you have nutrition labels on your packagings of food? That was one of my projects. And I did that with FDA and all kinds of stuff. And why? Because, you have a right to know what's being put in your body because your body is what you are, what you eat. And you came from the dirt and you'll go back to the dirt. So yeah, all those kind of things, I've done all that. All your credit card securities and QR codes and all that kind of stuff. Yep, did all that kind of stuff. And when I was a very young kid, how I started getting into Microsoft, I was very brilliant. And they brought me a little computer one day and brought me a great big book. And I sat all summer long and wrote code and developed code, ones and zeros and binary code and new ways how to code. And there began my career in Microsoft. Bought into it, still have ownership legally into it all. And, going all the way up, Steve Ballmer walked away with like $135 billion when he retired in 2014-15. Yeah, I know all my ownership is and everything. Do I have the documents sitting here alongside the road with nothing once again? Nope. All I have is a standard driver's license and nothing. They're withholding all of my documents. I've been terrorized by my own country once again. All of my own companies, all my own properties. Everybody just walks away and steals your entire life away and leaves you with nothing. This makes 3 times I've been through this. So what all you people think you know, you don't know what you think you know. Not about me. But I won't lie to you, and I'll tell you the truth and the fact. But that's how it is. There's a lot of hurting people in the world. And if we don't stand together and unite and stand against oppression, tyranny, and stand for one another, you don't have a nation, you don't have a world, and things get way out of control and out of hand. And there has to be balance within all of this. And I had a lifetime fuel card. There was the stolen, that actually happened in the state of Arkansas. And I had a lifetime fuel card that I could go anywhere, and I never had to pay for my fuel because it was connected to all my business. They stole that. I had Walmart stock shares, all that. Going all the way back, I used to know the people that owned Pandora Radio. They sold out, and all this year got into all kinds of massive issues and things in business, and people walk away happily ever after, except for me. Here I am fighting for my life again because I don't have any friends. I don't have anybody who cares whether I'm alive or dead. Nobody would step out to help me other than complete strangers. Most of the people that helped me didn't have much to give or much way to help, but they still helped me. And I continue to find that. And, I had ownership in commercial airlines. They stole them too. Now, all these people are profiting off of my life. Everybody's profiting off of me. Just like TikTok. Remember Kesha, TikTok? Yeah, I helped originally do some stuff even with TikTok here on its initial startup. And that goes all the way to the song Kesha and TikTok, and goes all the way back to a quote from Dean Koontz in a passage there off of a book. Even had some parts in that early on, and modern tech as you know it. It's kind of one of those things that's supposed to be happy and supposed to be retired, and I really just don't know what to do about it. I'm overwhelmed, and I've had semi-truckloads of documents out there, but I can tell you this, I'm tired of being assaulted, I'm tired of being beaten, I'm tired of being a victim of organized crime, discrimination. I'm sick of it. I've earned my life, and I worked for it. I didn't choose to be a victim of organized crime or domestic terrorism, violations of H.R. Bill 350, and being attacked because of my socioeconomic standards. I'm a good man, and I earned it above and beyond, and I was honorable to my entire nation, 100%. It is what it is, and I am who I say I am. And people that are evil and greedy, I was even working on ways to change Alzheimer's. Working on cures for Alzheimer's disease. And one of that was, had done researches on stuff in the proteins that generate the white matter and gray matter in the brain, which brings back the electrical synapses in the brain of the neurons and all that kind of stuff. So I was working on some medications and stuff for that would help do all that kind of stuff, and that kind of all went by the wayside, but, I just don't know what to do. I need some help and I need some friends. I don't know what to do about anything. I really would have thought I had friends left in the world and people that would have stood up and stepped out for me. Show up and show out, It's not like I'm asking for anything I didn't work for. I'd just like to have my own life back and be happy. I don't choose to starve to death out in the pouring ass rain and sitting here going hungry. I have no way, no fuel, no money to put left fuel in my vehicle. I have no food left to eat. I can't take care of my health. My face is swelled up because I go hypoglycemic from not eating. I do have a little bit of problems with my thyroid because of hypothyroidism. Can't even take care of my own health. It's been months since I've took a bath. Can't get anywhere to do anything, and you go to the community resources and they're so overwhelmed. Hey, can you help me? Yep, here's a couple shirts and a can of food. See you. Nothing else we can do for you. And then you talk to law enforcement. They don't do nothing. I had backup funds and things and people I trusted when I was out working and doing all this kind of stuff and doing my business. They stole from me too. So what would you do? What would anybody do in a situation where you've been robbed by thousands of people and attacked by thousands of people, and there's this massive amount of government corruption in employees that when you ask one time, I've had executive presidential privilege on some of this in the past, and all it take was asking one time and people would do a job. Nowadays, you can't even speak to a human being half the time. Everything goes through artificial intelligence and a phone list menu and bullshit. So great that you can't even contact anybody. And then other aspects of things, you can't even contact anybody. Some of your local law enforcement in areas are so corrupt. And I hate to say that, but that's a fact. That is the truth. They're so corrupt and involved in stealing parts of my life, and they're most likely connected to other aspects of other people than doing this for a profit. So it's really bad. It's like, where do you turn to for help? Because I take my life very seriously. I take my work very seriously. I don't know what to do about anything. I'm helpless, hopeless. I have a lot of fears. I have PTSD. I've been through enough in my life. Unless you've been there standing on the front lines and you've seen death and destruction, you've been there for all the sick and dying, and you put your life on the line, your lifetime, energy, money, companies, all of your property, and your entire life energy, your thoughts of your mind, all your ideas and all your work into an entire nation and half the world, yeah, you'd be left in the same situation, And, I'm not down on anybody's lifestyle about how they choose to live their lifestyle or anything else. That's on them. I'm just a guy out here. I'm trying to get my own life back together. It's just like Mossy Oak. Yeah, I had affiliation with Mossy Oak, designed camouflage patterns too, just like I've worked in the sporting goods industry. I've designed broadhead designs, archery designs, first single cam archery design. I designed it personally myself. And worked with Bear Jennings back in the day, and I used to know Fred Bear. And just like Lou Ferrigno used to be the Incredible Hulk, I used to know him too. And I helped develop one of the first, he was like 110-pound draw weight archery. And did this here specifically for Lou Ferrigno at the time. And there was an old arrow out there before carbon fiber arrows came to be, which I also developed. It was called the X-Weave, which I did not develop those. But it was more like a fiberglass arrow. And it was the only thing that bow could shoot. So I came up with ideas for carbon fiber arrows when I had ownership and 50% patents in carbon fiber. And matter of fact, the United States Department of Defense had the other 50% patents in carbon fiber. So stuff like graphene technologies, that was my stuff too originally. And the conduction of electricity through graphene, yep, that was some of my original ideas too. And some of the new ideas I had, nobody wants to take notice, but it's like graphene clothing, super suits and stuff like that. Oh yeah, that's a possibility. And technology suits and clothing, absolutely. And when we started doing all this, like with Hollywood and like with all the stuff with video games and stuff, like all the green screen technology, that was my stuff. And originally started out with motion sensors and ping pong balls. That's how all the technology started. And now today, that's all changed up into intricate little pieces and parts and newer tech. But that's how it all started, and I had a part in all that. So have people made their money off of me? Absolutely. I have ownership in all these stores, all these businesses, co-founder of Amazon, all the technology. You're using my technology every day. I can take you to radio towers all over the United States. Matter of fact, when I first started getting into radio signal technologies, and I started working with crystal diode radios at the time, and I bought into Radio Shack actually back then. And I put a Radio Shack in a town that was 20 miles away from me. That way I could go and always have pieces and parts to build electronics and new inventions. True story. And some of the famous musicians I used to know, I used to hand wire amps. I've hand wired some good guitars, some Marshall amps way back then, and all kinds of stuff. And even worked on cryogenically frozen guitar strings. Digitech, worked on Line 6 stuff, bows. Worked on speaker designs with bows and stuff like that. Fishman, piezo electronic crystals. Did all that. Crash test dummies for crumple zones and automotive safety. I started all that project too. This was my entire life. I never shut down and I never stopped ever. It was 24/7. Everything that I did, whether it was recreation, pleasure, whatever, normal work, everything, that's the way it was. My entire life was work. Everything since the time I was about 10 years old. And I was just good at it. I was brilliant. I was smart. And today, it's been many years suffering going through this, and most of my time has been fighting the evils of the world, just trying to get my life back and get my message out there. And these people just keep putting out all the Matrix bullshit and lies. Guys like Steve Wozniak, Segway was my original project. And I turned that over to Wozniak way back in the day as a partial retirement gift. You'd think some of these folks would pay it forward. Step up, step out, help you out. Don't seem to be so. But I am who I say I am, and that's my life, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I really don't want to die, and I'd like to be in good health. I just don't know how to make that happen when all these people are stealing from me every day. You want to go all the way back to the One World Trade Center? Yep, I had partial ownership in the One World Trade Center and on it too with Larry Silverstein. He scammed me on it. I was there all the way back at the Teardrop Memorial to help finish engineering Teardrop Memorial. I helped do all the engineering on the Riverwalk in the state of Texas. Matter of fact, donated some of my original designs. I'm the original designer of all the drones you see in the sky today. That's truth, fact, including worked on some of the Reapers. And all the little drones, those were my original ideas. And Department of Defense of the United States of America held 50% partial patents in that. My other part, and when San Antonio, Texas got blown away by all the tropical storms, I released some of my proceeds and helped people to help me manage some of that to help rebuild their entire city. That's truth, because it was so devastated because FEMA sucked, the government sucked, and nobody was doing nothing to help all these people. So I did. And I used to know some of the Bush family, and some of those people helped me manage some things and do some things. And, and that's the way it was. I've done a lot of good all across this country and nation, and I am who I say I am. And I've been through this before, and just because the younger generations don't remember history, I do. And, even when we hit droughts, just like a project, I took land border management contracts, federal contracts for all of our ranchers and farmers and big landowners to be paid a fee back in for wildlife border management, which was, it was supplying our like rabbits and basic small wildlife and needed balance for ecology on certain properties and stuff. And it was paying back for the farmers, and it helped the sportsman industry and helped the deer and turkey and all that kind of stuff, because here's the deal. We found out, did these studies and conducted them nationally, that our wildlife and sportsmanship industry and stuff like that and recreation draws more money than big industry in some aspects. And it was a sense of economy and economics. So what you spend, you think of what you go on a weekend, you want to buy a fishing boat, it takes gas, it takes you going to buy camping supplies, then you got to buy all your other fishing equipment, and then you got to buy picnic supplies. And so, it's economy. And that's the way everything is trickle economy. And it's a supply and demand. So I've worked all this stuff within stock, shares, holdings, royalties, revenues, economics, and economic development of the United States the entire time of my life. That was part of my job. And rural communities that didn't have communications and stuff, that was my big part of trying to bring communications to the United States of America throughout the heartlands and rural America to ensure that the same opportunities for business and growth and communications was there for everybody. And, that's really a big thing. And, when you get in big companies, everybody wants their slice of the pie too. And it turns into a very cutthroat business with some people. And not everybody's true blue. But just like Bass Pro, yeah, he had some ownership in Bass Pro, helped do the Bass Pro Cabela's merger, all kinds of stuff. I've even helped people in aspects of their own business and create products for themselves that I have no ownership in whatsoever. I just here, I'll create a great idea for you here. I'll help you market it. I'll help you get a start on it, and it's yours. There was people, when I had my own life and money and what belonged to me and my own connections with good people, I found people, that were strung out on drugs or maybe just having a hardship or a loss in life and suffering. I would create a product or give them a business. So here you go. Build a new life. Here it is. I'll just hand it to you. Now it's all yours. I tried to help people like that. And that was the basis of the real Anonymous. Anonymous was never about thieving, lying, cheating, stealing, taking, and hacking and ruining people's lives. The real Anonymous, was about making the world a better place. The real Anonymous was about ensuring that your friends, family, and neighbors, your community, your country, and your world was made a better place. And that's all about supply and demand. And you think about the United Nations and the World Trade Organization. I did all this kind of stuff. And the WTO right now supplies 95% of global economy. That's saying something. You're talking about a sextillionaire. Sextrillion. Decitrillion, how they want to pronounce it. Goes up in the figures I can't even add up all the zeros in. That's created an economy globally, global market across everything. And it's helped a lot of people. And the thing is, we're not done yet. There's still a long way to go. And there's still a lot of hurt and suffering people out there. Michael Jacko is, no, I don't know. Name doesn't sound familiar. I've forgotten a lot of names over the years. People have grown older. I've lost a lot of my older generation of people that used to be some of the best folks I ever knew. And the younger generation, they pretty much had all this handed to them. But like Hollywood movies and all that, I used to know all the people and movie producers. I worked on anywhere from going back in Friday the 13th to Nightmare on Elm Street, Hellraiser. One of my first horror movies I ever did was called The Howling. Did it, and then, worked up through aspects of Marvel Comics. Did The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. Some of the stuff with the Avengers series. Used to know everybody. And used to have ownership and everything. And the only thing I tried to do was help people, and I just tried to make my country a better place. Tried to do good things. I didn't ask to be attacked and everybody walking away with my entire life. But they sure did. And they stole Department of Defense contracts, stock shares, holdings. Wiped out my entire life. They physically robbed me and stole my IDs. Makes 3 times that they stole all of my IDs from me. Can't get any of them back. I've tried. And I don't have any help or resources, so I can't really accomplish anything. So they just basically left me to starve and die. And let me tell you, by the time you suffer a PTSD, get a few health problems and all that, how do you go begging one of your own companies for a job? Here, I'm going to be a slave. No, thank you. Slavery ended in the United States. I'm not a slave. I am a good man and a businessman, and I am who I say I am 110%. So all these people stealing from me, they're some horrible individuals. And this goes way back in time. And I'm not backing down from nothing. I ain't backing down from nobody. And I want what belongs to me. I want to be happy and at peace and retire and go live my life in peace. That's not much to ask for. I've done my job. I kind of like to retire like everybody else. And I'm not spending the rest of my life in some homeless shelter begging. I want some justice in the situation. There's corruption and everything. No, I don't do any shows on YouTube or Rumble. I don't do anything right now other than a fight for my own life. But I've been a lot of things in this world and I honored my country. That is a fact, and that is a truth. And, when I built the Veterans Service Animals for Veterans program, did all the Veterans Reintegration programs, did all the Veterans Reformation Act, even did aspects with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, built the SNAP program, helped do away with all the unemployment divisions and helped take it to the job centers, and even worked on the programming of the computers and all that kind of stuff also. I never stopped. But it was all about making my country a better place, So I just don't know what to do about anything, but all the cloud technology and all that kind of stuff, that's all my stuff too. Did I do it all alone? Nope. A lot of it was my original ideas, just like, the integration of Microsoft and iOS, going to open source platform, computer programming, so all this here technology works seamlessly together. Yep, that was my ideas too. Because here's the deal. You can speak any language in the world you want to. You can speak your own language. You can even make up your own language. But unless anybody else can understand it, it does no good. And that's why that the basis of computer programs in today and technology, that it has to have a standardization in it to be able to communicate with one another, or you have all this here technology that can't function tomorrow. You think of the basis of artificial intelligence. Yes, I have worked on the early designs of first all this here technology that can't function tomorrow. You think of the basis of artificial intelligence. Yes, I have worked on the early designs of first. You think of the basis of first worked on the early designs of first artificial intelligence industries being what is fuel injection. That is the basics of fuel injection. And like when none of your motorcycles, all this fly-by-wire stuff and all that, helped develop all that kind of stuff. Sure did. Fact and truth, right down to the rumble strips on the highway and some of the designs with Department of Transportation on the safety and guardrails and stuff like that, did all that also. It's just been a lot of life. Yeah, you want to look me up? You won't find nothing on me. You know why? The only stuff you'll find. Have I been in jail before? I sure have. Illegally, wrongfully. Yep, I've been through all kinds of bad things, and it was all a setup for people to steal from me. Called manifest injustice because of actual innocence and fraud upon the court. That's a fact and a truth, too. Because the difference between me and everybody else, I know what they stole from me. And I know what I was working on, and I know who I am. And I know what they took from me. And I know what exists in this world. Because I built it, and I worked on it, and earned it. So I have no reason to lie about anything. I was targeted. And, one time they tried to they actually tried to murder me several times. And I was kidnapped a few times, actually physically assaulted, beaten, tortured, physical torture, and trying to give up some of my contracts and trying to give up some of the things that belong to me. I never did, though. But I'm still alive. Here I am. Barely. But I am who I say I am. That's the truth. That is a fact. 110%. So, I'm communicating on a device that I have ownership in and built, and a company I own, and the revenues from it while I'm going hungry, and these people are stealing my paychecks every day. So you think guys like Warren Buffett's a really good man? I got money sitting in Bank of America. I've had this to federal litigation before. I've had the evidence sitting on the federal DA's desk, and with the FBI and all the federal agencies, they own all this stuff. That's fact. That's truth. And, when parts of history, irrefutable, undeniable history are out there in parts of my life that I've worked, just because I did so secretly and just because I did so in the shadows to keep a private life, that I still exist. But yeah, it's been years. I've been literally years right now fighting for my own life. And, part of my job before, I've helped rescue a lot of kids in my lifetime, a lot of young girls and children and stuff that were in bad situations. I've helped rescue a lot of people. I've helped do a lot of good things. And, so don't knock all the good people out there, or the people that you don't know what's going on in their lives or what work they really do. Because there's a whole lot of people that actually do a whole lot of good things. And if they didn't, this world would be a lot worse place. So guys like Kim Jong-un, I used to know Kim Jong-un. Used to know him. I used to know Emperor Akihito out of Japan. Used to know them. Used to know the former president of Mexico. Used to know Justin Trudeau. Going way back in time. Like I say, I used to know Gorbachev and Putin. Been all around the world, all the way around the world in my lifetime. And tried to do nothing but good by a lot of people and and stabilize world peace and grow a better world and economy. What's wrong with that? Well, it's hard to get a hold of anybody. It's not cool when you've been targeted and attacked by very evil people. There's nothing good about that. But that's what happened to me. I got targeted, and these people walk away, millionaire, billionaire boys, and they steal my entire life away. You'd think after you've put in all the work and you're a co-founder of all this and have ownership in it all, you'd think that these people, that's what they're supposed to do. I'm entitled to company benefits. Just like being a veteran, entitled to USERRA. It's called retroactive justice. And that also means through certain provisions of the Department of Labor, double for my trouble, because what they did to me in stealing my life away was malicious and willful actions. So that means I'm supposed to reap double for my trouble. Those are the laws. I know the laws and rules and regulations. And, a lot of the old talk show hosts and stuff like that, I know all these people. I mean, good Lord, like I say, I used to have ownership of the St. Louis Cardinals. Helped build the Busch Stadium. Matter of fact, I helped build the T-Mobile stadiums. Helped build the AT&T stadiums. I have ownership in it all. Helped build all the campuses for the Microsoft, all the Apple campuses, did all that. Amazon campus, did some of that. Stuff with Google, did all that. Been there, done all this stuff in my lifetime. And while I was busy doing all the work, everybody else was busy enjoying their life and stealing from me. And that's how things really went. And here I am with no way left to fight back. Why? Because people are horrible. I mean, people are really horrible in the United States of America. How do you expect one man to fight back against 1,000? And I can't make any valid communications. I can't get a hold of anybody. Can't get any legal representation on anything. I got money sitting in numerous banks. Got a lot of business out there. I got a military retirement and paychecks that I'm entitled to. And this was all settled up. And it all goes back in parts of history that I can't talk about, but it's most certainly fact. Most certainly a truth. And it was all settled up and taken care of. And these people, they didn't abide by their part and play by the rules. And that's the thing about people that don't play by the rules. You see who's playing by the rules, and I'm sitting here alongside the road starving out, playing by the rules, because I'm a damn good man. And the others really can't say so much for them. But here I am. If anybody would like to help me, the thing about me and everybody else, I can back it up eventually. And because I am who I say I am. And I don't lie about that. I have no reason to lie about that. What's wrong with saying that you were a federal agent at one point in your life and that you had an active military career and international career, and saying that you honored your country and protected lives of your people? There's nothing wrong with that. The things I accomplished in my life through all that was saving a lot of lives. And I don't regret that in any way, form, fashion whatsoever, because I did my best and I poured my heart, my life, and my energy. And if anything, second chance drug courts, I did all that too. I used to know a lot of justices. And when we had all these trouble with all our society decay and all the massive drug problems, they said, what do we do about this? You're so smart. How do we fix this? And I got together with a lot of justices, district court judges, Supreme Court, big government, whatever. I said, well, here's what we can do. These here people, yep, it's one of the only poisons in the world that people can willfully take on their own choice and die. And it creates a societal problem. But they still have free moral choice to do so. Well, some of these people, they deserve a second chance. And that was one of the things about, the drug courts when I started working on all this, and even going from all the paperwork trail to all the digital trail in all the government systems, that was me too. And when all these second chance drug court programs come on, I helped develop Narcan. It's a product that actually helps save the lives of people that's overdosed. I helped develop that kind of stuff. And anyway, the second chance drug court program was to be able to give people the availability for a second chance, clean up their lives. Because obviously, once you become an addict, these people that do so, their life spirals out of control, and they no longer can control it. And, you know, the choice that they made no longer becomes their choice. That's why they call it an addict. But they're not an addict all their life. They're simply people that's not given the right choice or chance to change their lives. But when you give people a choice and a chance, there's a lot of people that do take that choice and chance to change their lives for the better, and they see that there is a better life. So do I regret doing those kind of things? No, I do not, because it saved a lot of lives. And it gave people, I mean, some of these people could have been spending a lifetime in prison rather than, having a second chance to get their life back together. So it was all a good thing, but I did those kind of things. Here's another one. A lot of people may agree or disagree. I don't care what you think. But they asked me again, what do we do about all these here major drug problems? I started working to help legalize cannabis. And part of the time, I'd already been working with cannabis and other kind of things, and oils, sustainable energies, plastics, bioplastics. Because some of your chemical plastics out there, they put off a harmful compound that's known as not THC, but CPBs, which is a toxin. So, like, if you're throwing all your bottled water out in the sun and stuff like that, if it's not 100% organic, made out of organic oils and stuff like that, it releases a CPB, which is a toxin that's released back out into the water. Well, if you're drinking a lot of bottled water, that creates a lot of harmful effects. I mean, it's basically like you're taking a percentage of toxins and harmful chemicals into your body and poisoning yourself. So that's the reason, unless your bottles are made out of 100% organic plastics and biodegradable, that you should not be storing your bottled water out in the sun long term, because some of these bottles leach off CPBs. But the original was stuff like organic plastics and stuff like that are recyclable, biodegradable. So I got into stuff like that and asked, what do we do about all this here stuff with all the harsh drugs? Well, here, some of this, you can legalize cannabis, and, the markets are controlled. You create a lot of products, hemp, industrial hemp and stuff like that, paper, clothing, rope, oils, and it's very sustainable, easy to grow. And the government has found out that, some of them make a lot of money. There's a $45 billion industry around all this stuff now, and that's nationally. Some are for it, some are opposed. Is it an end all to all things? No, it's not. But then again, freedom of choice. But it did do one thing. It did reduce drunk driving accidents. The mortality rate of drunk driving accidents and things like that went way down. And I see they're restricting me because I talked about cannabis. But anyway, those were things. And I don't have anything to do with any of the government legislation or anything on that now. That's all on the big boys. But that was all a part of my life in the past. So been there, done that, worked on it. Neither here nor there, but it's saved a lot of lives, made a lot of money for people, created a lot of industry, it's solved a lot of problems, and, it's not an end all to everything. And I don't really think until mass population steps up and has input on everything that a lot of our problems go away until it's we the people again. When it's we the people, then there's ultimate choice in everything. So, there's so many things that I've been a part of, and it's given a right and a voice back to the people, thrive and survive, peace and prosperity, and good things. Navy SEAL. Yep, I used to be a SEAL. Yeah. Whole lot of other things. Worked JSOCs and all kinds of other things like that. That was all part of my career. And I used to have a command level position and stood at leadership in a lot of things. That's who I used to be. Kind of like to have my retirements and my paychecks and all that, and it was all worked out before, and people turned to greed, evil, hate, organized crime, domestic terrorism against me. It's pretty bad to know that I used to even write up rules of engagement for war, NATO standards, international standards, stuff like that, did all that too. And still, they want to try to go up against me. I helped build Homeland Security when we didn't have Homeland Security. Really a truth. Fact. And, you know, a lot of people may look at that and say, oh, well, we don't like you because you've been a part of this, that, and something else. Well, you know what? I take a great amount of honor in what I was allowed to be a part of and achieve in this country that has written a part of history and has set and paved the way for great things. You know, I just am who I am. But I put my life on side to help grow my country, help build my country, help be a good man, help do a lot of good, great, amazing things for a lot of people. And I'd like to have my life back. I'd like to have my bank accounts, my business, my property, and get on with living and be happy and at peace. I don't think that's too much to ask. And how can you continue doing good things in the world if you don't have what belongs to you? Because it does take money to make the world go round. Money buys everything. And right now, that would buy a steak dinner. And I really like steak dinners. Steak and shrimp, steak and lobster, that really sounds good with a glass of port wine. That would be amazing right now. Just because I look like some old hillbilly bum, I've been a very simple, humble man, but very complex. But I didn't choose to be sitting out alongside the road, stranded in the rain with nothing and no food and no money and no way to survive. It's simply due to the fact that there is really that much organized crime in the United States of America. People are really that corrupt, and the situation is absolutely that urgent. You know, because people that care about you, people that love you, they wouldn't let you suffer like that. You know, I used to be one of the most well-respected fellas in the United States, and I had the most prestigious jobs that had a lot of, I had to pass a lot of background and proof on it. They know who I am. And I was very well respected. So I'm still that same person. I haven't changed. Everybody else changed. I just fell off into PTSD, was helpless, hopeless. I didn't know what to do about anything. It was just overwhelming. I am who I am. And I sure ain't done nothing wrong to anybody, any place, anywhere. And that's a fact. That's the truth. Just trying to get my life back together, y'all. If you'd like to help me out in any way, form, fashion, and however, that'd be really cool. I've paid it forward in the past. I'd pay it forward again. And, I don't have any place to go. I don't have any place to be. And I need some help. I can't travel down the road without money and fuel. Can't eat. Can't take care of my health without food. And I'm down to the point now that I've got PTSD so bad and suffer from legal abuse syndrome that it's just about become debilitating to me. All the attacks, a lifetime of attacks and occupational background of all the death and destruction, it takes its toll. And then to have a heart of pure solid gold when all you're trying to do is make the world a better place, that hurts. It's devastating. But anyway, peace out.